Well, glory be, mercy me. We've done it yet again. I don't know why all of a sudden I just feel like I should open up with a song. Let me get my guitar. Let's. I don't even know what song. I don't even know what song I want to play. Okay, we're gonna do that one. I think I capo this one on 3, if I'm not mistaken. These times they are uncertain, of that there is no doubt, and nobody can tell me quite what it's all about. The heartbreak and the loneliness, the chaos and the fear will make even the strongest cry, I wish my ma was here. A young man on a battlefield fights for a rich man's gold. The bullet cracks into his spine, he knows he won't grow old. And as the tears come streaming down, at once his mind goes clear. The war was fought for nothing, he cries, I wish my ma was here. A lively story well in hand, a joke to soothe your soul. And when it came to arguing, she'd forgive and let it go. And when I cried, she held me, told me it's okay, my dear. And as we face these darkened days, I wish my ma was here. And as we march into the streets, as all the righteous do, we'll raise our voices to the skies, we cannot stop the truth. And as we tear their structures down, we'll raise a victory cheer. We made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Yeah, we made the world a better place, and I wish my ma was here. Hey guys, how y'all doing? Nova Scotia, good to see you. Oddity, Eric, real good to see you, bud. How you doing, bud? How you doing? You dropped a couple of things in the Discord and then disappeared on me, bud. Scared the hell out of me. I hope you're doing okay. What a crazy weekend, man. What a crazy weekend, you know? Things are just heating up. Yeah, we're getting Nova Scotia telling us it's getting a little bit cooler out there, but heating up in BC. Right? It's heating up all over the place. We're heading into a period of time where we're just not going to be able to predict this stuff, right? Like one of the things that the climate dismissalists love to say is like, "Oh, you guys, you've been predicting these things for blah blah all this kind of stuff," but it like the prediction is that it's going to be unpredictable. Like that's the prediction. We're sitting here being like, yeah, the heat. The ocean levels are going to come up. We don't know when. But it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. And the same with like tornadoes, and the same with like wildfires, the same with all of this stuff. And like we don't know when heat is going to spike up in an area. Like we don't know, obviously, but we do know it's going to become more common and less predictable. That's the whole shtick. And now we're starting to see, to me, the stupidest response that's happening these days is, oh, well, a 1% increase. You know, it's not a 1%, a 1 degree increase. Because that's what it is. It's a 1 degree increase, right? Heading to a 2 degree increase. People are being like, oh, 1 degree increase, that's not a lot. What, at 1 degree? Who cares? right? Forgetting, of course, that, like, hey, if it's at -1, right, then things are frozen. And if it's at +1, then things are not frozen, right? A 1-degree difference is a significant change, a major change, especially in a global system. And we're just facing, like, at this stage in the game, I have to call it willful stupidity, right? Like, it's willful stupidity. And more I'm seeing more and more stuff where it's just like, the people who are talking are not talking because they're being serious. They're talking because they're being stupid on purpose. And because it's the only position left, right? That if your goal is to protect the wealth, power, prestige of the psychopath class, well, you don't have a cogent argument, because there isn't one. Because that's all over, right? The rational side of the equation is done now. It's obviously happening. You've got to be a complete Luddite and a complete moron to think otherwise. And so there are people in the conversation who are paid to be just that. They're just paid to be morons, right? They're just paid to be morons. And that's what we're facing. Hey, Ligandies, how you doing? To be honest, not really. I had a bad experience at the hospital. They did give me this headache IV that helps stop the headache. That's good. However, ever since, I've literally no energy. Just a few minutes walking around makes me tired. Or even just trying to sit and clean the kitchen makes me tired. Oh, Eric. Oh, man. What a tough road you're on, dude. What a tough road you're on. And it's, to me, Eric, it's the randomness, eh? Like, it just doesn't seem completely random, you know? Like, you get stories of people who got COVID and they're just like, you know, whatever, normal, walking around. They never even got sick. Right? You got stories of people getting it and getting pretty sick, but then recovering. But then you've got stories like yourself where you get it, you get sick, and you just sort of stay sick. You know? Oh man, my heart goes out to you, Eric. I hope things improve for you. I hope you get a break soon, bud. I hope something breaks your way soon, bud. Because it just seems like you've been dealt that shitty hand. And to me, that, like, your story and what you're going through, Eric, is exactly the, like, it gives complete lie to this fucking individualist bullshit of just like, all you got to do is bootstrap yourself, and, you know, if you get knocked down, stand up again. And the whole ethos just doesn't accept that sometimes life just puts you down, and that's just the end of it. Like, too fucking bad, right? And what are these guys going to say to you, right? What are these guys going to say to you? They're going to, what can they say to you? Oh, you just stand up straight, bootstrap yourself. Well, yeah, you are, right? You are. You're doing the best that you possibly can under the circumstances. These guys are just toolboxes, right? Hey, Anemone, how you doing? Watson, good to see you too. No walk around the graveyard today, but I need a day off. That's all. That's what it's coming down to. You know, I got to pick a day, and I got to have a day off at some point. And because I don't get days off anymore. Like, I work capitalist job, and I'm even trying to pick up more hours at the capitalist job, and then I do the video. I do the video work. I do the research, and then I do the show. Right? Like, I don't get days off. So today I wanted a day off, and so I took it. Yeah. It was actually relatively cool this afternoon. You wouldn't have sweated your brow off. Yeah, dude, I happily played some Elden Ring on the couch. That's what I did today. I just needed a day off. Because it's the thing I'm struggling with. The thing I'm struggling with is that we're in a very diluted space, and I'm really trying to find how to penetrate this, and it's causing me a lot of, like, I can feel, even now I can feel like the energy crackling over my brain, just being like, okay, bud, like, how do you break through this? How do you get through the denialism, right? And I mean, climate change deniers are evil. Yeah, we're getting there. Like, we're getting there to the point where it's no longer about oh, I don't know what's going on, or it's no longer that kind of stuff. It's literally like, yes, I want people to suffer. That's what they're saying at this point. Did you hear about the armed protesters preventing the removal of homeless in Dallas? I did, yes. The Civil War continues and begins to unfold, right? I just caught a glancing blow of that. Of course, I had that article ready to go, and then I accidentally closed it and lost it in the ether, so... Yeah, it sounds like Nancy Pelosi is going to Taiwan. Nothing like escalating a war with China, right? That's all America's got left, right? It's got this enormous military, and it doesn't have anything else. And it knows, like, you have to be a complete dunder to think that you can continue this path. Fundamentally, the American military is funded by taxes that are coming out of the American populace, and the American populace is collapsing into poverty. They literally won't be able to maintain the military for much longer. And they know there's a shrinking window. And so the window's going to shrink, and it's going to close. And once that window closes, the American military is not going to be able to confront something like China. And so these psychopathic fascists are getting desperate. And they're going to start doing insane things, more insane than what they've done in Ukraine, by a lot. Like, we're going to see, like, more absurd, like, Iraq invasions, like, just absurd, insane decisions made by people who live in a dying empire, right? It's going to be like Nero fiddling in Rome kind of style shit, guys. Like the ruling class is going to become, like, completely publicly unhinged. Like, it's going to be obvious. It's going to be obvious. Are we going to talk about fake leftists infiltrating leftist spaces? I mean, that's something that's always happening, right? That's always happening. That's nothing new. Like, for God's sakes, like, the largest terrorist organization on the planet's the CIA. We know, and we know they do it. They admit to doing it. At the hospital, the nurse refused to give me oxygen while I was waiting for the doctor. I was waiting for the doctor for 12 hours. Jeez. And when the oxygen ran out, that's when I received care. Which, of course, is the first thing the doctor did was put me back on oxygen until the IV ran through my system. Man. It just sounds like... And it sounds to me like you're in a hospital environment where they don't have the resources to be able to actually give you the care that you need. Right? Because they're trying to privatize this shit, Eric. They're trying to privatize it. So they don't want to fund it. They don't want to actually get more nurses and get more doctors and get more resources. Right? They don't want a functioning system. They want the system to collapse so that they can vulture it. That's the whole point. Right? And we're just experiencing it. Are you waiting tables at the capitalist job? No, I essentially I work a till in a cafe environment. I'm like the face of the operation, basically. The people I work with are very grateful that I'm there because none of them want to do that. Like, you're dealing with a sea of people, right? Like, it's just person after person after person. The pay is pretty good. I really like the ethos of the cafe that I'm in. It's all locally sourced. The food is all made in-house. It's made by chefs, like our own chefs, in-house. It's organic. The gluten-free vegan stuff, right? It's all part of and parcel of the whole thing. The people that are running the place and the people that own it are working really, really hard to try to address issues like climate change, lower the footprint, make sure that everything's good, and also make sure that the staff is well paid and taken care of, right? Like, we operate on a profit sharing model, and so I get a percentage of the sales every single day. And it's obvious that the people who are running it and who own it want the staff to be well taken care of and happy. Like, they understand that it's not just like a ruthless capitalist make every penny you possibly can. That we're building something there that should be there, right? Like the Evergreen Brickworks, where I work, it's like a little tourist attraction, right? It's where it's where Toronto used to make all of its bricks, right? That's why it's the Brickworks, right? The Evergreen Brickworks, and it's been maintained as like a historical site. There are all these beautiful trails and these beautiful paths around They've done a really good job of maintaining it and keeping it developed. So it's like this great little piece of Toronto's history that they're trying to ensure stays there. Like, instead of getting like bulldozed down and just turned into condos or some dumb shit, like they want to make sure that this place exists and is wonderful and beautiful. And it's also part of Toronto's ravine system. One of the gems of Toronto, and nobody knows about this, is its ravine system. That there are sections of Toronto that can't be developed because they're ravines. And so what they do is they've turned them into, they've put like footpaths through them, and they've turned them into parks and stuff. And so you literally can be walking down the street of like a heavy urban area with like skyscrapers and shit, and then take a turn down a wooden bridge, and suddenly you're in nature. Suddenly you're like literally in the middle of a park that's just like you're out in the wilderness, right? And you're surrounded by trees, and you can see wildlife around you. It's one of the, like, every city has like the thing that it is known for. Well, the thing that Toronto should be known for, but nobody knows about it, is its ravines, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere. You can just duck down one, and suddenly you're just in the midst of like this absolutely beautiful area. And the Evergreen Brickworks is one of these, and it's connected to the largest ravine that exists, which is the Don Valley. And so I'm quite pleased with what's going on there, you know? Like, I really do think that, like, unless it takes a crazy turn, unless it, like, suddenly the owners are like, we want to squeeze this for every penny we can get, burn the place down, like, unless that actually starts happening, it really is, like, a place that's like, oh, we actually give a shit, you know? I've definitely worked at places that were just like, no, like, we're gonna pay you 5 cents a day if we can, you know, and we're gonna say fuck you. Go, oh, you want some of our food? Well, it's gonna you got to pay full price for it. All the bullshit that you expect from like a capitalist thing. So as much as I complain about the capitalist job, I think this is pretty decent. Like, I feel like it's amazing how different it is to work for a place when the people you're working for and with actually care. You know, when they actually give a shit. It really matters. The way public health agencies and the media are portraying monkeypox is very 80s AIDS epidemic. Yeah, it does have that vibe about it, doesn't it, Emily? For those of you who don't know, monkeypox has really gone through the gay community pretty strongly, and I mean that's got a very strong similarity. Monkeypox, I'm not prepared to start reporting on it as a crisis yet, but it's ramping. It's getting there, right? The World Health Organization is making larger statements about it, but so right now I think it's on the precipice. It could go one way or the other, right? And if it could very well just sort of peter out and become just like Ebola was, right? Like, we remember Ebola. There was like an Ebola scare, and then Ebola kind of just went away, or was contained and dealt with. Well, we're seeing whether or not monkeypox is going to take. And I love that we called it monkeypox, dude. I got to tell you, I'm so happy that we gave it it's got a silly name. Good for us. You know, after this COVID stuff. Like, COVID's a bit ominous sounding, isn't it? And like, we Omicron and all this, it's got that kind of like don't. And then here comes the next one, and we're like, monkeypox came from monkeys, monkeypox. I'm good for us. We needed a silly one. We should call the next one the clown flu or something, right? Yeah, isn't it awesome? Our lives are at the mercy of senile boomers like Pelosi, who are risking sparking a world war. Yeah, that's fun. That's what this Ukraine-Russia stuff was always about. Ultimately, the U.S. has to have a showdown with China because China threatens the U.S. dominant global position. You know what, man? I'm actually at a point where I'm happy to say that no one is threatening the United States' dominant global position more than the United States itself. That if the United States had have actually dedicated itself to building its own infrastructure, if post-World War II, it had turned around and been like, we need to make sure that our society is strong. And how do you have a strong society? You have strong infrastructure. Everybody's doing well. Everybody's got good work going on, all of that. But this ethos that took over that said, let's just transfer all the money into the hands of the psychopath class, that's what's destroying them. It's not the ascension of China. It's not any of this kind of stuff. It's the fact that the United States is doing everything it can to destroy itself, right? It's not China that's destroying the United States, right? And it's not even the ascension of China. Like, you think about like where China is right now. Well, China is basically where the United States was in the 1960s, right? Like China has basically got to like 1960s level United States, right? Like, but it's just that the U.S. has completely created a series of not baffling, and it makes total sense once you realize they're psychopaths, but like a series of extraordinarily self-destructive decisions, and even worse than that, they've entrenched those self-destructive systems into their institutions to a degree where, like, even if we get rid of the Pelosi's and the Bidens and all of these guys and they get cleared out, well, the next generation is the same guys coming from the same institutions, right? Like, you still have your, like, lunatic, crazed, let's just give all the money to the rich and it'll trickle down. Like, that's still the primary ethos that exists in the structure of the system. So like, America is not going to stop shooting itself in the foot, and it's going to collapse because of it, and in huge ways, huge ways. No, I'm not gonna shine a spotlight on that. Honestly, I'll tell the story very quickly. One of my Patreons, I had to ban off the Discord because he randomly sent me a discussion that he had with some other person, which had disparaging remarks about me, which I don't care. Lots of people do that. But it was also like climate change denialism and openly transphobic. I organize with a disabled trans woman by the name of Isabella Gamp. I'm very proud to do that. I think Isabella Gamp is a fighter, that what she is doing is the right thing to do. She is fighting on behalf of people on ODSP. She's doing exactly the right thing, which is fomenting protest. August 1st, 4 p.m., Bloor and Bedford Road. Please come. If you are in the city at all, I'm going to be sending more stuff to... Apparently, there's this article that happened. Just saw this. So we've got advocacy groups calling Ontario government to double social assistance rates. Fantastic. They're not going to do that, right? This isn't going to happen. And it's not going to happen for a very simple reason. We're not surrounding the halls of power. We're not surrounding people's houses. We're not on the streets about it. And because we're not on the streets about it, they don't care. Very straightforwardly, they do not give a fuck. You can talk all you want. You can send all the letters you want. You can go to the pub. You can complain about it there. You can send sternly worded letters. You can get celebrities to endorse it. You can do anything you want. They don't care, and they never will, until you're showing up at their houses and surrounding them like we are on August 1st, Bloor and Bedford Road, 4 p.m. That's John Tory's building. Until we actually get in their faces and show them that we're willing to cause personally them problems, nothing's going to happen. And so these advocacy groups, which, of course, CTV does a really excellent job of not actually telling you who these groups are, so you can't actually contact them, right? Good reporting there from the CTV, right? That's their role. Like, technically report on it without actually helping anybody organize or do anything, right? So you diffuse it. But, like, until these advocacy groups are actually surrounding the halls of power, nothing's going to happen. These people are psychos. They don't care. They don't care at all. And so Rob sends a thing disparaging her to me, and so he gets kicked. That's the whole story. And it just shows you, though, that, like, there are Looney Tunes people in the world, man. Like, I don't know why we need to tolerate this. Like, if a person's going to be a transphobe, we don't need to, like, listen to them, right? And that's enough talking about this guy. I have to say that the nursing union is failing to provide those needs, of course. I keep hearing from healthcare workers how much they hate their union. Yeah, like, the union is part of the capitalist structure now, right? Like it exists in order, instead of to fight against the owners, they are negotiating with the owners. That's the whole point, right? And it is as simple as we vote for a president of a union, and that president of the union gets bought. It is that straightforward, right? So of course they hate their unions. Of course they hate all this kind of stuff, because the capitalist structure has completely corrupted it, which is why I say it can't be reformed. That the workers need to go on strike. They need to defy their own union leadership. They need to shut it down. And what do I always say, right? Surround the halls of power. There's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to do. Hey, Compton, your face is a brickwork. Well, Compton, thank you. I appreciate that. You right? Like, I try. I need to. I want to let the beard really grow out before I start like shaping it. No, your face is a brickwork. Now. Let's not have leftist infighting, okay? So, Cafe Belong, that's the one. Demand Better, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Hope you're fighting the good fight out there. The oil companies in Canada have so many future liabilities that they're planning to bankrupt those costs into the public that we can nationalize them without any more compensation, yeah? Renationalization should never enrich the capitalist class, or you're rewarding them for their privatization schemes. Yeah, like, you can tell that people are so daft and clueless when you talk to them in this conversation, because when you say, hey, we should do something about climate change, they're starting to say stuff like, well, you don't have a plan. Like, yeah, we do. Nationalize the fossil fuel. Like, step one, nationalize the fossil fuel industry. Step two, arrest the fucking psychopaths who have created the apocalypse and put them on trial. Yes, I'm talking about a mass tribunal. Yes, I am. Those people should go and, at bare minimum, should be in prison until the day they die. That should be what happens to them. Step two. Step three, only use fossil fuels for the absolute crucial shit. Food generation. Heating. Right? If you go down to Yonge and Dundas Square right now, you know what's happening? There's a bunch of fucking billboards lit up, huge, enormous ads, lights just flashing and shining. It's like, yeah, we're not taking this seriously at all if that's happening, right? Well, what could be done to try to prevent trouble? Well, maybe shut that shit off. This absolutely pointless, serves absolutely nothing. Oh boy, did you hear about the new season of Desperate Housewives? Like, who gives a fuck at all? Yeah, well, man, it's a good thing I know about those Tim Biebs. Oh, now I know if I go to Tim Hortons, I can get a Tim Bieb. Oh, my life is so much enriched now. Like, we're children. This is baby talk that we're dealing with at this point. And, like, shut down these private flights. Shut down these fucking shooting rockets into space. There's so much shit that we could do. Like, this is the part of the conversation where you realize that they're stupid on purpose and that they're babies on purpose, because there is so much that we could do, right? Like, we have done literally nothing, and there is so much more that we could do than this. And this idea that, like, whoa, you don't have a plan, while we're literally saying nationalize the fossil fuel industry, only use fossil fuels for the absolute crucial infrastructure we need, like food, heating, right? Shut down private flights, shut down like this super yachts, all this kind of shit. And fundamentally, this is very crucial. Do not fine polluters, arrest and incarcerate them. That's something that I think needs to be said over and over and over again. That these psychos, should any consequences come their way ever, are always going to be like, well, we'll pay a fine, when no, you'll go to jail and you'll die there, is the only response that's worth anything. Because, like, they'll happily pay a fine if it means they get to murder people. They love murdering people. Message redacted. Message retracted. Yeah, no, I know there are periodic Ebola outbreaks. Yeah, I understand that. But it's not like a world-sweeping epidemic. Watson is a block-jawed, sawtooth. Well, content. America has always been a grifty extraction project throughout its history, yet building foundations and things that work is secondary. Yeah, which is why it fails, right? If it can't go to war, if it can't actually just destroy anything and steal... This is my favorite thing about people who are like, capitalism is the most prosperous system in the world. It's because they're literally only looking as far as this. Like, they're looking as far as their own hand. And they're like, okay, but where did that wealth come from? Oh, you literally went to another society, enslaved its population, stole its resources, and destroyed the place. So, yeah, you can say that, yeah, oh, this is so prosperous. Capitalism did so great. Because you've got the ethos of a fucking train robber, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure train robbers think that train robbing is the best way to make a bunch of money, right? Like, it's crazy. Speaking of the corruption of the AFL-CIO, CLC unions, the WSWS perspective today is excellent on a potential breaking away from that issue. World Socialist website. The Socialist Campaign. Here we go. Here we go. Hey, Mystic, how you doing, bud? Yeah, but you're being authoritarian. Yep, having rules and following them is authoritarian, right? Like, this is all I hear. Anytime anybody says to me, oh, that sounds authoritarian, I hear, oh, you want rules and then to follow those rules. That's what I hear. Like, we're so used to the idea that anyone can do anything and that's totally fine. So, like, to me, it's no different than, like, a 5-year-old. Like, if a 5-year-old is told that they have to go to bed, they go, that's authoritarian. That's where we're at. Like, this is the baby brain level that we're dealing with. How dare you impose rules and then follow those rules? Authoritarian. Nobody hates brick faces, like slightly different brick faces. There you go. Have you seen the Jacobin article about Alberta Premier and how the Conservatives in that province think that their leadership wasn't far-right enough? Yeah. No, we're heading into fascism, dude. Like, it's what's going on. Jordan Peterson has been cast as the new villain in the upcoming James Bond movie. He has not. That's not real. Although I see it. It'd be a good cast. It'd be a good cast. Although he's not a very... he's not really an actor, right? So it would be a really weird thing for him to do. Nursing is a very taxing job. Yeah, they're not paid enough, or listen to the union. I don't... Like, the only thing that's got to be keeping these nurses and doctors from striking is like, their own compassion. Like, that's what these psychos are taking advantage of, is the actual compassion of the people doing the job. All right, let's have a look at this. A socialist campaign in the UAW presidential elections. This week, the United Auto Workers is holding its 38th Quadrennial Convention in Detroit. The convention will vote on establishing district elections for the organization's leadership for the first time in 70 years. This is required following a referendum held under the watch of a court-appointed monitor overseeing the UAW due to the corruption scandal that engulfed its top leadership. The delegates will also nominate candidates for these elections, scheduled for October and November. The World Socialist website has endorsed William Lemon, a 34-year-old Max Trucks worker, for UAW president. In a letter to all UAW members sent to tens of thousands of workers last week, Lemon, is it Lehman or Lemon? Lehman outlined the basis of his campaign. Lehman wrote that decades of concessions contracts overseen and imposed by the UAW have created a situation where a large section of our members are impoverished. Workers confront soaring inflation, the spread once again of COVID through the plants, and the intensified exploitation from the auto and other companies. Over the past year, the UAW has worked to force through concessions contracts in the face of growing opposition from the rank and file, including no votes of more than 90% at Volvo Trucks, Dana, Deere, and most recently, Ventura Auto Parts. The letter pointed to the massive corruption scandal, which has implicated a dozen UAW executives, including the two presidents before the current president, Ray Curry. Lehman explained, however, that corruption cannot be understood as something separate from the character of the UAW itself. The corruption is a product of the UAW's bureaucracy subordination of our interests to the corporate drive for profit, he wrote. The UAW, Lehman explained, is a union in name only. All the traditional functions associated with the unions have been abandoned. It is controlled by a massive apparatus with assets of more than $1 billion and an annual payroll of more than $75 million that exists to suppress opposition and police the working class. Lehman's campaign is not aimed at reforming the UAW bureaucracy. My campaign, he explained, is aimed at spearheading a mass movement of the rank and file to break the dictatorship of the apparatus and to transfer power and control over all decision-making processes to the rank and file in the auto plants and all work locations. The campaign is advancing a fighting program, including massive wage increases, mandatory cost of living adjustments, an end to all tiers and part-time employment, full funding for pension and high-quality health care for workers and retirees, and the reestablishment of the 8-hour work day. Most significant, however, is the fact that Lehman puts forward a socialist and internationalist perspective that has been excluded and barricaded from the UAW and all the unions for so long. The UAW and other industrial unions were established in the 1930s through militant and insurrectionary class battles led by socialists. The witch hunt against socialists in the 40s and 50s, which in the UAW was led by Walter Reuther, was bound up with the subordination of workers to the capitalist system and the Democratic Party. The expulsion of socialists from the leadership of the UAW initiated a process of degeneration that ultimately led to the obliteration of the unions as working class organizations in any meaningful sense of the word. Beginning with the bailout of Chrysler in 1979, the UAW apparatus, in response to the protracted decline in the global position of American capitalism, agreed to a series of concession contracts that at the same time established an ever more direct relationship between the union and corporate management. I am a socialist, Lehman declared. Socialism recognizes that society is divided into classes. There is a class war taking place right now, but only one class is fighting. Socialism means putting the world's productive forces under the democratic control of the working class and distributing resources not to enrich a handful of billionaires, but to meet the needs of the whole human race. The letter declared the campaign's opposition to both the Democratic and Republican parties, which, for all their infighting, are controlled by the ruling elite. It added, the UAW is part of this network of political control aimed at depriving working people of any voice whatsoever. And I find it sickening that after decades in which we have been told there is no money for schools, public infrastructure, or social services, the two parties, including politicians elected with UAW backing, find $40 billion to escalate a war against Russia over Ukraine that could obliterate humanity. The Biden administration is aggressively promoting the unions both as an instrument for suppressing the class struggle and as a mechanism for disciplining the working class behind the war drive of the ruling class. In his published report of the convention, UAW President Curry explicitly embraces the U.S. war against Russia over Ukraine, as well as the anti-China agitation of the Biden administration. Lehman's letter also declared his opposition to the nationalism promoted by the UAW and his support for the International Workers' Alliance of rank-and-file committees. We confront giant transnational corporations, and we must see ourselves as part of an international movement in order to win. On the eve of the convention, Lehman has participated in meetings with Ford workers from Germany and India, sponsored by the IWA-RFC, to discuss a united campaign of the international working class against job cuts and corporate exploitation. There is no question that the UAW apparatus will do everything in its power to block Lehman's campaign. As for the pseudo-left organizations which posture as reformers, but in fact work to bolster the apparatus, they have been totally silent. The last thing these organizations of the affluent middle class want is a movement of workers from below. The campaign of Will Lehman for president of the UAW marks a new point of departure for the working class. Regardless of whether delegates at the UAW convention nominate Lehman and ensure that his name will appear on the ballot, Lehman's campaign is attracting wide support from workers across the country. It takes place under conditions of explosive class struggle in the US and throughout the world. On every continent, working people are demonstrating against the rising cost of living, greatly exacerbated by the US-led war against Russia in Ukraine. To stop imperialist war and address the urgent cost of living crisis, this movement must break out of the straitjacket of the pro-capitalist and nationalist unions and acquire a socialist and internationalist character. The WSWS calls on all workers in the US and throughout the world to support Lehman's campaign. You can find more information and donate at willforuawpresident.org. And ad break. Sorry about that. That's a good story to hear, man. I'm glad to hear that there are people who are actually standing up and actually fighting back, right? Jordan Peterson, the underhanded leader of the evil crime syndicate Spectre. Oh, Mr. Bond, I see that you haven't cleaned up your room. Who do you think should be the 2024 Democratic ticket for president? It's meaningless. Who do I think it should be? I think it should be the janitor of your local Walgreens. That's who I think it should be. That would be actually someone worthwhile. Ad fail. I know, BP. Sorry, bud. I got to do what I got to. I don't know if I've ever seen you around here. Good to see you. Hope you're here to contribute, or at least have some fun. We're all dealing with this enormous collapse, this huge, massive crisis in front of us. Yeah, who do I think should be the 2024 Democratic ticket for president? I think it should be, let's say, Joe Smith. Just literally a random, just a random guy would be better than whoever they're going to put in. John, I was wondering what recording program you're using. It is called OBS. OBS is what I use. I really got to start like multi-streaming on Twitch as well, and I just it means dealing with a new program, and I'm a scared little monkey, and I don't have any time, and I'm trying to stay sane. I'm trying to stay sane in all of this, man. This is insanity, isn't it? Don't you guys feel like it's insane? Like we're just living in a crazed world of insanity where everybody's position seems to be, let's just blow the place up. Like, it feels like the call to the void has grabbed a hold of us. That we're all literally just like, well, it burns down anyway, let's just do it. I remember a few years ago, nurses who worked for Canada Blood Services went on strike and won their strike, but it took a few months. Yeah, prolonged strikes, it's the way to do it. Sorry, yeah, Ligandes, this is the thing, right? So, if you guys were listening in earlier, one of my Patreons, this fellow Rob, he sent me screenshots of him like going mask off on this stuff, and it's like, yeah, what was the point? I don't know, dude. Like, what was the point? Like, what was the point, right? But like, that's what you get for being a climate denialist and a transphobe, right? Like, who can explain? It's inexplicable, right? That there are just Looney Tunes people who live in the world, and they're just trying to burn the place down, right? Like, that's what it is. It's a burnt bridge if I've ever seen one. And why? For what end? To what purpose? Why burn the bridge? Just seems nuts, right? Just seems completely nuts. But there are tons of these people in the world who are just like, well, let's burn this bridge. Why? Because burning bridges, right? What's it? My path will be lit by the bridges I burn behind me. Yeah, Democratic ticket functionally doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. Oh, by the way, China is strongly warning against Pelosi flying into Taiwan. No, Compton, really? I thought China would be like, that's totally fine. That's completely fine. Yeah, the Speaker of the House in the American political system should definitely fly into Taiwan amidst a still ongoing civil dispute. Yeah, completely normal. Totally normal. I get classic tease. I want Dr. Squatch. Yeah, too bad. Too bad. The guy who wore the rubber boot on his head should be the Democratic nomination. Yeah, that guy. Or the rent is too damn high. I'd vote for that guy. The rent is too damn high. Yeah. Don't worry about this guy, Watson. Don't worry about this guy. This is internal Discord drama. If you donate $1 to the Patreon, you can get into the Discord, and then you too can be part of the internal Discord drama. I feel like I've given too much time to this guy anyway. He's just some fucking loser, right? Like, that's the thing. It's just like somebody who donated to me and then started popping off. And, like, at the end of the day, I'm just like, why am I even talking to him about him on the stream? He's such a fucking loser. He's obviously a massive loser, right? So who gives a fuck? Vermin Supreme for Prez. Let's do the Tick. The Tick should be the Democratic nomination, right? You'd be like, Spoon! There's a guy I can vote for, I can really get behind, right? His solutions to things would be like, we're going to take the fossil fuel industry and send it to the moon! There you go. There's something I can get behind. His running mate should be that rent is too damn high guy. Yeah, definitely, ma'am. Like, I trust those guys more than I trust these fucking lunatics, right? What we really need is a party like the Looney Party in the UK. Yeah, we have the Rhinoceros Party here in America. Or here in Canada, rather. Richard Wolff. Yeah, dude. I would vote. Like, if I was to actually pick someone seriously, it would be someone like Richard Wolff. For sure. Not the TV show with Patrick Warburton, which was a failure in every regard, but the 90s cartoon, The Tick. The TV show was a remake that was a total failure, just on the face of it. As the show was failing, because I was a fan, right? I was a big fan, and I thought that the casting of Patrick Warburton was probably one of the better castings I've seen on television for that character. But the writers, as the show was failing and everybody could see it, the writers were releasing stuff onto the internet, which was just starting to kind of pick up steam. And showing people, like, look at the shit we're putting up with. Like, there's a character in The Tick called the crazy midnight bomber which bombs at midnight. Like, that's his name. And every single time the characters refer to him, they say his full name. So it's obviously the joke, right? Like he's a crazy midnight bomber what bombs at midnight. And he's a guy with, like, a crazy mustache, like the big eyes and, like, the thing. And he's like, whoop, and he's, like, throwing, like, literally the cartoon, like, bombs, right? Like the big round thing with the wick. He's, like, throwing these around. I am the crazy midnight bomber what bombs at midnight. And that's his whole character. And they wrote an episode with this guy, and we're essentially told, you can't say the word bomb. We don't want you to use the word crazy. We don't like that there are explosions. It's literally like, oh, so, like, we can't even use this character, basically. And that's when you realize, like, these guys, they're not interested in, like, fun, right? They're not interested in anything, like, they just don't want, like, that's why everything has become, like, dark and gritty. Like, you can get away with, like, explosions and things like this if it's dark and gritty and realistic and everything's up. But if you have a character who's just like, hoo-hoo, hee-hoo-hoo, like, throwing around bombs and shit, everybody's just like, oh, no, I don't know about that. Oh, my God, I hate it. I hate our culture. I think that our entertainment is dumb. Everything is stupid. And exactly, we need the Dadaists to come in now. We need the Dadaists to come in and cleanse this, like, dumb bullshit. We need people to come in and just take the piss. Like, somebody needs to dress up as, like, Batman, but actually have, like, bat ears with the big sonar thing. And he needs to talk like this the whole time. I'm Batman! I'm here to save Gotham! And he just needs to sound like a dumb idiot, but everybody's, like, taking him extra seriously, like, this is a serious person we definitely should pay attention to. Certainly not somebody who obviously has a fucking mental illness. Like, yeah, dude. Well, we've turned our society into a garbage heap, and we're gonna light it ablaze. That's what we're doing. Yeah, Penguin needs to be like a legit penguin. CR Strifey, absolutely. Like, we just need like a straight up cleansing of this absolute dumb, moronic, backwards, dumbass, stupid, childish, insipid, ridiculous society. We're back on Warhammer. We got huge Warhammer 40k fans in the society. Here's my complaint about what's happening with Warhammer 40k, right? Is that Warhammer 40k used to be satire. It was obviously satire, right? Like the Imperium of Man and the Space Marines are so obviously like chauvinistic, bigoted xenophobes, and are obviously just like warring for the sake of warring, right? But now the new stuff that's coming out, it's just being played straight, and there is no satire to it anymore. We're supposed to look at these Space Marines who are walking around being like, "For the God Emperor!" Who are like landing in areas and finding like intricate diplomacy going on between two different alien races and just like, right? And we're supposed to look at these guys and be like, "Yeah! Fuck yeah!" As opposed to be like, "Oh my God, yeah, like what a bunch of fucking morons coming into these things and just blowing everything up." Like literally that's what Space Marines do. Anytime they come into any kind of situation, if there are like Eldar, which are like space elves basically, talking to like some other race, like the Tau or whatever, right? The Space Marines come in and they're basically just like, "Oh, well, they're not humans." They don't give a fuck. They don't care. It's shoot first, ask questions later. You know, the American way. And I'm seeing Warhammer. Warhammer has the potential to become part of the mainstream society as a form of fascist propaganda. You know how I've been saying, right, that we're going to start seeing shows where the protagonists are fascists, and there's not going to be like a commentary on it. It's not going to be looked at as like the folly of fascism or any of that. It's going to be that they are fascists and that is good, and that ethos reinforces itself. I think the Warhammer universe is exactly the vehicle for it, because the satire is being drained out of it. And now it's being presented to us as if it's like actually cool. As if it's like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome. Space war aliens fighting," right? With like no underpinning of like the class slavery that goes on, no commentary of like the hell worlds that these people are creating, just an endless, godless, unending war of devastation and death. And it's just, and that's what's going to be considered like high art in our society very soon. And what's scary about it especially is that the Warhammer 40k universe, when put into that capacity, is actually really awesome. There's a lot of really cool shit in there. Like, and that's going to be very attractive to people who don't want to think about it too hard, right? They're just going to go see a movie where there's like Space Marines gunning down orcs and shit with like the war bosses and all this, and the Tau like with their fucking awesome Gundam shit. Like, it's going to be very cool. And it's going to be explicitly fascist. And we're going to go, "Yes, America," right? They might as well fly the American flag, right? How Joe Rogan went from supporting Bernie Sanders to wanting to shoot homeless people, I'll never know. Dude, that transition is as easy as this. He was given $100 million to go to Spotify and he moved to Texas. That's it. That's the end of the story, right? Wealth corrupts you completely. And you're seeing it in real time with Joe Rogan. That before Joe Rogan got this $100 million deal, right? And he was living in Los Angeles, and so he was still interacting with like lefty, liberal-minded sort of people on a fairly regular basis. And he was making money, but he wasn't making like this ungodly sum of money. And so he was still in certain ways rooted to a working class mindset. And he was still rooted to the understanding that there are legitimate social gripes. And then he just got handed $100 million, went and lived in Hicksville, fucking Texas, where it's just like guns and yeehaw, right? Pull your bootstraps up, let's go hunt black people society. And it's changed him completely, and it happened instantly. Because wealth corrupts people. And the only way to avoid the corruption is to give the money away. It's the only thing that you can do. Like, if somebody handed me $100 million, my endeavor would be to give it away. Because it changes people. You literally lose the capacity to have empathy. That's what happens. And Joe Rogan is case in point. You lose the capacity for empathy. And as soon as you lose that, you lose your humanity completely. Yeah, College Humor wants to do a series of Batman parodies portraying him as cartoonishly dumb. What's his name? Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes did probably the best parody and the best take of Batman I've ever seen, where he just like completely acknowledges what Batman is. That Batman is like a man with an overt, obvious mental illness, beating the shit out of homeless people, instead of using his wealth in order to resolve the crisis, right? And once you see that portrayal, it's hard to walk back from it. Like and the society is beginning to come around on it. Like the new Batman that just came out, really actually did a pretty good job of acknowledging those realities. I don't want to recommend it to anyone because I know they're going to do a trilogy, and I'm very, very suspicious of them. Because the only satisfying end to the Batman arc is the realization that Batman should not exist. That's the only true end that makes any sense for this character Batman. That Batman's very existence creates the conditions for Batman to exist in, right? That if you actually want to resolve the issues that Batman is fighting, then eliminating the Batman is the first thing that you should do. And if you're not getting to that point in your arc of a story with this character, then it's just fascist propaganda, right? Then it literally is just like, sometimes you just need a guy to beat the shit out of homeless people on the streets. That's literally the story. Unless it is a story about a child going through a trauma, interacting with a world he doesn't understand, and steadily through his interactions, by choosing to dress up like a fucking bat, realizes that this is folly, and that he would be much better off ridding himself of these childish fantasies of being a vigilante superhero, and using the wealth he's spending on that in order to actually improve the lives of the people he's literally fighting. Like, that's the Batman arc, dude. And if it doesn't go down that way, it's just fascist propaganda. Which is why I don't recommend it, because I expect that's what's going to happen. I like the Burgess Meredith's version of the Penguin on the old Batman TV show. All of those the original Batman, the 1960s Batman stuff, the 1960s Batman stuff is all of those villains were probably some of the best. Even Cesar Romano as Joker, he refused to shave his mustache and they like dyed it. It worked. You were just like, yeah, it's Cesar Romano and it's fucking whatever. Who cares? But he was a great Joker. He was great, dude. I loved him. I would love to play the Joker, dude. The Joker would be such a fun role because there's no rules. You can do what you want. Right? And that's why the Jared Leto Joker is such a critical failure. Because for whatever reason, Jared Leto's trying to like be cool or like be like kind of like he's trying to do something with Joker that Joker isn't. You know? Like Joker's a clown and a madman. Like it's very straightforward. Like you just act like a wacky idiot, right? And you can do what you like. But Leto is still like he's not trying to make him fun. I think that's really what it is. Like as long as you're trying to have fun and be fun with Joker, it completely works every time. But if you're going there to do something else, like Leto did, get the fuck out of here. And yeah, Burgess Meredith is the Penguin. Yeah, we love him. We love him. I love shitting on the Imperium. Yeah, they wiped out a faction called the Diasporax, who are a democratic society of humans and aliens. We just wanted to be left alone. It was literally the last words uttered by the Diasporax. Yeah, like, that's what the Imperium's gonna do. Like, they like, think about, like, the bombing campaigns that happened throughout Southeast Asia, right? Why did that happen? Why did America go over there and bomb the shit out of Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam? It was literally, their stated agenda was to staunch the spread of communism, right? Like, literally just walking over to a society that's like, we have a different idea of how we want to organize ourselves. And Western capitalism basically just saying, nope, can't let that happen, right? Can't let some other idea take root somewhere, right? Gotta fuck that up. Batman is not left-wing, dude. Batman is firmly right-wing. The whole idea of a vigilante striking out into the society, it's a very, very right-wing idea. And for God's sakes, Batman's a billionaire, dude. You've said this before, where Batman's left-wing. Like, Batman's not left-wing. Batman's not trying to fight to free people from the shackles of oligarchic exploitation. Batman is an oligarch who is using his wealth to exist in this fantasy space, right? Like, he's not left wing by any definition. Penguin's an evil capitalist, obviously. Two-Faced is a nationalist. Deathstroke is a hitman that works for capitalists. Joker and Riddler are incels. Harley Quinn and Catwoman are TERFs. Harley Quinn is definitely a lesbian. She definitely has a lesbian relationship with Poison Ivy. Harley Quinn is bi, for sure. So, difficult. I don't know about this TERF thing. Anyway. Yep, root of all evil is money. You can serve Moloch or you can serve God. You got to pick one. Gotham City citizens are too right-wing and unhinged to be fixed, John. That's why Batman beats the shit out of them. Wow. Mystic just straight up blaming the victim. Mystic just coming in here and just being like, yeah, Batman's right to beat the shit out of these people because they can't be fixed. They just need to be beat. You just need to beat the shit out. That's what you need to do. Wow, Mystic. Wow. Frank Gorshin is the Riddler. Oh yeah, dude. Probably one of the better Riddler portrayals, frankly. Like, Riddler's a tough character to portray, I think. Because even Frank Gorshin, who did a great job, but he kind of captured a little bit of the... He went kind of the Joker angle with it. I've always viewed the Riddler as kind of like a showman more than a madman, you know? And he would present himself more as a game show host, right? Which makes sense for his character because he's presenting you with a game, right? And people rarely capture that. Even this new Riddler, I feel like this new Riddler, the actor they got was good, and I think he did a good job with what he was given. But it was very clear that they were just like, make big choices. Just make big choices. Right? You can't go wrong with this character if you just do a big choice. Like the Mask they had him in, right? Is it a good choice? Yeah, we could debate that. But it was a big choice, and they went for it, right? So, and usually this is something I learned in the arts, is that if you don't know what to do, just make a huge choice. And if everybody goes, ah, then at least it had a reaction. At least they were like, ah, instead of it just being kind of nothing, right? Jared Leto's character in The House of Gucci is hilariously stupid. Leto is like, what a weird guy, dude. What a weird guy. He just can't seem to find his feet in this superhero thing. You know, every time he tries to do any superhero stuff, like he was Morbius, and Morbius gets universally panned. He's easily the least regarded of the Jokers. Like, even below, like, Cesar Romano. Like, you know that if you're below Cesar Romano, you've whiffed it. You've missed it, right? kind of funny. Jared Leto Joker is so similar to Andrew Tate and other Manosphere goons. Dude, Hasanabe is just ripping the shit out of Andrew Tate. Like, I knew that Andrew Tate was like a chauvinist. Like, obviously he's a misogynist. But I didn't really get that what he was doing with this Hustlers University thing until Hasanabe's stuff. Like, it's a pyramid scheme. It's a multi-level marketing scheme, is what it is, that he's doing. Like, where did Andrew Tate come from? Why am I seeing Andrew Tate everywhere? Well, it's because he's got a whole army of goons out in the world trying to get people all involved in this Hustlers University. And why are they doing that? Because it's the way that they make money, because it's a fucking pyramid scheme, right? Oh, it's so fucking crazy. But figures like Andrew Tate, we're going to see more and more of these guys, right? Because the society is backlashing against the social justice, or the woke, if you like. There's a backlash that isn't coming, it's here. And we're going to see more and more and more of these Andrew Tate-style figures. And they're going to get more articulate, and they're going to get more... like, Andrew Tate's pretty obviously a chauvinist and a misogynist. Like, it's pretty obvious that that's the case. You don't need to dig deep to figure that out. But imagine someone like Andrew Tate who's saying a lot of the stuff that Andrew Tate says, but isn't being explicitly misogynist. Like, it's very effective, and it shows you that there's a hunger within what's being called the manosphere. But amongst the male population, there's a dissatisfaction. There's a disillusionment that's happening. And that disillusionment makes a lot of sense, right? It makes sense that when you have, like, in the space of a single generation, the shift from a single male wage earner having a wife, 3 kids, a house, and a car, and a shift away from that to now both spouses need to work, and you can't have kids, you don't get the house or the car, and you're both working just to pay your bills. Like, it makes sense that there would be a frustration and a disillusionment, especially as, like, the feminist movement is coming around and talking about equality and all of this kind of stuff. And the capitalist system has done a really good job of pointing, of making men point to women and making women point to men, so that men and women fight amongst themselves instead of going, oh wait, the problem is capitalism, it always has been. Right? Once again, the culprit is capitalism. So as long as we can keep people like Andrew Tate in the conversation, blaming the dynamic between men and women instead of the truth, which is capitalism itself, then we can secure our position, right? Batman was born a billionaire. He didn't choose to be. So, I don't give a fuck. Changes nothing. Batman is a wealthy person beating on desperate people. The new Batman movie did a pretty good job of pointing out the thing I really respect about the new Batman movie, and I hope this carries through into the sequels, is that they really captured that Bruce Wayne is a confused child. That was the major success of that film. That Bruce Wayne is a confused, detached, doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know anyone in the society. Like, that's how you know, right? He's going into Gotham, and he's literally meeting the rulers of Gotham for the first time. Like, this is a little boy who has had no guidance. No one has had the capacity to help him. He's been making his own decisions, and the decisions that he's been making are exactly the decisions a little boy would make. I'm going to dress in a costume and beat up bad guys, right? And so hopefully what we're going to see is a series that's about this little boy growing up and becoming a man. That's what I hope. Frank Gorshin was also the Star Trek episode with the half... Oh, yes, I remember that episode. Yeah, the half white, half black people. That episode of Star Trek was extremely effective for me as a child in quelling any kind of racism I had. I think about that episode a lot because it's absurd that they took the issue of racism and they made it absurd. Because the whole principle was that there's a race of people on a planet, and half of the planet has black on this side and white on this side, and then the other half is black on this side, white on this side. So it's just inverted, right? And they're at war with one another over this. It was perfect. It just pointed out the fucking madness of it all. Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas Wayne, had a right wing, was a right wing. Well, depending on the film you watch, Thomas Wayne's character changes fairly significantly, right? Like, in Joker, Thomas Wayne is presented as a very self-centered, kind of libertarian type. But in the new Batman movie, he's presented as being a good man. Everybody says that he's a good man. Maybe he made, like, one bad choice. And he was trying to build, like, a charity fund, right? Like, these sorts of things. So, like, well, and again, like, I think the film did a really good job of capturing that Bruce Wayne is just a scared, confused, lost little boy. That's the success of that piece. We'll see if it carries through. The last old Bolshevik, Lazar. Hey, Mocked, how you doing, bud? I feel like I haven't seen Mocked in forever, dude. How you doing, bud? Good to see you. Died today, 1991, mere months before the USSR was dissolved. Good trivia fact coming from Mocked. Glad you're here, bud. You know the ending of the Avengers Infinity War where Thanos is relaxing on a farm looking at sunrise? Yeah, that's Andrew Tate in 10 years after destroying an entire generation of young boys. Yeah, dude. That's the best part about Andrew Tate, dude, is that he's going to face absolutely no consequences. Like, he's literally going to, exactly as you say, he's just going to be on a farm looking at the sunrise, being like, well, I made millions of dollars grifting everybody, right? Like, this is, someone like Andrew Tate is actually, like, very indicative of the danger of what is happening in American society. That American society is collapsing, right? It's collapsing in big and significant ways, and what happens when the collapse happens is you have lots of people who stand up and say, well, if this is going to collapse, like, if it's all a big scheme anyway, if it's all a big grift anyway, then I'm going to become the best grifter. And that's what Andrew Tate has done. Like, he'll happily tell you that the whole thing's corrupt. He'll happily tell you that the whole thing is shitty and it's going down and all that kind of stuff, right? He happily, openly tells you that. And his solution to it is not to fight back, is not to build community, is not to push back, is not to protest. It's to just be a better grifter, right? That if the people that get rewarded are grifters, then we are going to be the best at it. That's his whole solution. And you're going to see more of it. There's a great Joker in a short called Batman Dead End. It's on YouTube. Oh, I've seen this. Yeah, I've seen this. They got like a bodybuilder to be Batman. I always like that. Good to see you, Adam. Person of wealth. Batman was born a billionaire. Nothing you can do about it. It's illegal in the DC universe to give your wealth away. Exactly. Yeah, that half black, half white episode is foundational for me as well. Good to see you, Barnabas. Boop. Right back at you, bud. So, finally, from The Guardian, an article actually talking about the thing that I've been talking about all along. Good to see that there are some people who are catching up. Berating climate skeptics isn't enough. Disruptive protest now seems the only way forward. This is from John Harris. The time has come to choose. Do you trust the people in suits downplaying this emergency, or the activists lying in roads in an attempt to ward off catastrophe? For the past year or so, I have been repeatedly listening to a critically acclaimed album, Ignorance, released in 2021 by the Canadian band The Weather Station. Its music is graceful, poised, and smooth, but it is also an almost conceptual set of songs about the insurgency of the urgency of the climate crisis and the disorientation of living in a culture that still refuses to acknowledge it. According to its chief creator, the singer-songwriter and former actor Tamara Lindemann, many of its songs evoke what happens when this veneer of everything will be okay disappears. That moment of revelation is perfectly captured in one song I have played over and over again, which is simply called Loss, and finds Lindemann recalling a conversation. What was it last night she said? At some point you'd have to live as if the truth was true. Amid unprecedented temperatures, fires, and the grim pantomime that will be eventually end with the selection of our next prime minister, I suspect more people than ever would now understand those words as a matter of direct emotional experience. For millions of us, this summer's heat is synonymous with an anxiety that is now impossible to shake off, and a renewed awareness of the small transgressions and outright hypocrisies that are required to get through each day. We perform them because of something that Lindemann's lyrics consummately describe, that very human talent for just about averting our eyes from what is directly in front of us, so as to live a quiet life, and a political culture that just about keeps the everything will be okay veneer in place. These are things evident across the planet, and the UK has its own grim versions of them. One of the two remaining Tory leadership candidates has pledged to retain the current de facto ban on onshore wind farms. The other wants to reconsider some of the key policies built into the government's milquetoast 2050 net zero target, the positions of Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss respectively. The Labour Party has one big climate policy, its £28 billion a year climate investment pledge, but is still not putting global heating anywhere near the center of its basic message, and is thereby failing to acquire much consent for action on it. Meanwhile, for a certain kind of media voice, the past week has been all about raging against climate skeptics and deniers and their influence on politics, as if pointing out that they are mendacious and dangerous is an act of bravery. The former BBC presenter Andrew Marr provided a good example in a monologue broadcast on his new show on LBC. I, for one, have had enough of being told by pallid, shadowy old businessmen and lazy, ignorant hacks and sleazy lobbyists who aren't real scientists, any of them, that the science is wrong and that what is happening isn't happening, he said. Enough. The key question of 2022 is not whether these people are wrong, both factually and morally. We know the answer to that. For the moment, I don't think many people need to be thinking very much about particular parties or politicians. What we surely need to focus on is the deep attachment to fossil fuels still locked into our economy and political system, and how to help the movements that definitely want to end it. Extinction Rebellion, Insolent Britain, Just Stop Oil, and the other forces that clearly understand the unspeakable gravity of the moment. This comes down to a question that still does not intrude on politics nearly enough. As these groups take the most direct kind of action, do you support them? And if, or rather as, the climate emergency deepens, and the awful gap between politics and the sheer scale of what we are faced with only widens, what will you think if their actions take new, ever more disruptive forms? To some extent, the way our media and politicians fend off the climate crisis accidentally confronts people with exactly those arguments. In one of our most regular national rituals, mainstream politics barely intrudes, and instead, a protester fresh from some or other climate action is berated by Piers Morgan, Richard Malady, or one of the presenters from GB News or Talk Radio, and the only real options become clear: meaningful and radical action, or nothing at all. An editorial last week in The Sun insisted that we need a sober debate, free from the extremists' juvenile panic, on how we inch towards net zero in decades to come, which made panic look like much more sensible options. In April, the Labour Party demanded that the government take legal action to effectively ban climate protests that disrupt traffic and oil production. When he stood to be his party's leader, Keir Starmer took donations from a former boss of the RAC and AA, and the latter company cum lobby group's former chief financial officer. The people he apparently thinks should be locked up, by contrast, are motivated by a comparatively pure mission to confront the car industry and quickly finish the hydrocarbon era, and thereby avoid catastrophe. So, who do you choose? In some cases, Occupy is a good example here. Sustained support for protesters and activists has bumped up against their lack of a coherent agenda. But the modern climate movement is not like that. The basic position shared by the central handful of groups is clear enough. Net zero by a much earlier date than 2050. XR and the people backing the climate and ecology bill, including such politicians as the Greens' Carolyn Lucas and Labour's Clive Lewis, envisage that change being driven by citizens' assemblies set up to decide how such an aim will be reached. In the context of Westminster politics, such ideas may seem so unlikely as to be barely worth considering. But remember, Brexit is a madcap, massively disruptive project that defies just about every element of political and economic sense, but was until recently the preserve of cranks and obsessives, and only became a reality when David Cameron decided to bypass MPs and ask the rest of us to decide. Less than a decade after it decisively burst into the political foreground, moreover, we are locked into it for keeps, with the support of both main parties. By comparison, is trying to set an example to other countries by doing exactly what the climate demands really so fanciful? Activism and protest often trigger a knee-jerk suspicion that they will alienate people and kill whatever cause they advocate. But experience suggests the exact opposite. Just as successive waves of social reformers, the suffragettes, and the anti-apartheid movement were stubborn, daring, and creative enough to make their demands irresistible, so the people now lying in roads and charging into airports and refineries have conveyed the urgency of climate breakdown more successfully than anyone in a suit. There is a very good reason for that. It is only well outside the centers of power that you can find the answer to a question that power and politics are dodging more than ever. How to live as if the truth is actually true. Surround the halls of power. Surround the halls of power. It's the only thing we've got left. There's nothing left to do. We need people to be protesting, to be finding protesting, to be organizing protesting, to be disruptive for the sake of disruption, and to cease listening to the haters. Yeah, I heard about this. I actually have a thing for it, Barnabas. Multiple people were killed in shootings, in Vancouver. I've only got the breaking. Oh, it's this over here. Yeah. Nope. This is another thing. Literally just like military personnel admitting straight up that we should go into Venezuela and destroy it. Multiple shooting scenes in downtown core in the city of Langley, with one incident in Langley Township involving transient victims. Male is described as Caucasian, dark hair, wearing brown Carhartt coveralls and a blue and green camo t-shirt, with a red logo on a right sleeve associated to a white car. Police have interactions with one suspect, unknown of others involved at this time. That came out about 5 hours ago. And I assume it's continuing on. You know what gets me? Fox News has on their side political commentators, but left-wing news channels like CNN, MSNBC have any leftist political commentators. It's because CNN and MSNBC are not left-wing. The faster you recognize that mystic, the faster it's gonna improve for you, right? That CNN and MSNBC are right-wing, that Fox News is fascist. There is no such thing as a left-wing movement in the United States. It does not exist. That all of these corporate entities exist to serve capitalists and serve the oligarch class. There is no left wing. That the dichotomy of right versus left in American politics is very much like WWE wrestling politics, right? Just convince people there's a left wing when there is no left wing in American politics. I missed a bit there, but did that article criticize capitalism? I think that's the problem with The Guardian, right? Yeah, I mean, that's true, actually, Adam, that, like, At least The Guardian is allowing these dissenting voices to exist on their platforms, but it does seem to be as long as they don't criticize the capitalist system itself. I think that's an accurate critique, I should say, and I think that's as true for someone like George Monboy, right, as this fella here, this John Harris fella. You watch WWE, John? I haven't seen WWE in a long time. Vince McMahon retires. Sure he does, bud. Like, that just means he's just not gonna, like, go into the ring anymore. He's gotten old. That's what that means. He's still gonna be the owner. Like, he's not retiring. Joe Rogan joked about shooting homeless people recently, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's super funny if you're a psycho, right? Yeah, just not as right as Fox, yeah. So Pope Francis arrives in Canada to apologize for Indigenous school abuse. That'll do it. That'll do it. Now, I simultaneously, like the general opinion of people is like this eye-rolling, like, yeah, get fucked kind of thing. But this actually does matter. Like, this is an acknowledgement, right? It's something that we all get to point to, right, from now on. Literally, if any of these fascist kooks that say, like, oh, the residential school system wasn't a big problem. It's like, literally, the Pope apologized for it, dude. Like, what do you need? Like, it is, like, the end of a conversation, you know what I mean? Like, it does mean that the dismissalists and the denialists, you literally just get to point at one thing and just be like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? Like, for real, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you, there just comes a point where it's, like, insanity. And the Pope apologizing for Indigenous school abuse is one such of those one moment. Of course, Barnabas, you're absolutely right. Like, where's the reparations? Where's the actual material changes? Where's the actual, like, goings on? Where's the big truth and reconciliation movement? Right? Where is this? Where is the dismantling of the continuation of the residential school system? Because it's important to remember, the residential school system wasn't shut down, it was transferred, right? That it moved from being in the churches to being a government institution. That the government, while it's gotten rid of, like, all of, like, the horror show of, like, the typhoid and, like, the absurd diseases and the overt, just brutal abuse that was going on in the churches, still enacts the goal of the residential school system, which is to eliminate the Indian. It's the continued goal of the Child and Family Services, is what it's called now, right? Take children away from their parents, right? So destroy the indigenous population, right? Step one, destroy the indigenous population, right? Plunge the indigenous population into the First Nations population into desperation, alcoholism, drug abuse, absolutely destroy them in the most barbaric way possible, and then send government bureaucrats into these family units, declare what they see as unacceptable, right? Based on whose standards? Our standards, of course, and the standards of having destroyed families with barely any supports whatsoever. And then what are we doing? We're removing their children from them and sending them to government agencies instead of churches. So it's a continuation of the residential school system. It's just got a little smile on it now, right? It's not explicitly let's destroy these people, but it's still a form of cleansing, and it's still going on, right? It's still going on. I'm not joking. Oh yeah, this is Vince McMahon. He's completely retired. Yeah, okay. But like, so it's still in the family. It's still the McMahons, right? Vince McMahon retiring. Like, how old is that guy, dude? He's got to be in his 70s now. Like, he's getting there, right? Everybody retires. How old is Vince Mc? I just don't care that much about WWE, I guess. Dude is 76 years old. The dude is 76 years old. Yeah, dude. Let the man sit down. Let the man sit down for a minute. Right? Yeah, it's got a rainbow flag on it now, Ligandies. That's exactly right, dude. Exactly right. Yeah, I know there's many Catholics who are hating the Pope is doing that. Yeah. No, of course. There are many Catholics who are like the elimination of Roe v. Wade is considered like a big Catholic success, right? I don't care about this one. Oh yeah, Congo to auction land to oil companies. Our priority is not to save the planet. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Like literally just an outright overt admission by people in Congo to auction land to oil companies saying explicitly, yeah, we don't care about the planet. Like we don't. We want money. We're here for money. We can destroy Congo, home to one of the largest old growth rainforests on Earth, is auctioning off vast amounts of land in a push to become the new destination for oil investments. Congo needs to develop still. Yeah, great. Like, super duper, bud. Super duper. Like, so the way to develop is to destroy the planet, right? Like this has a real like double think sort of way about it. Yeah, we're gonna successfully develop by destroying the very thing we need to survive. Like that's what's mad. I'm 39, Mystic. I know I'm an old dog. Like, if we actually gave a shit about this point that the Congo needs to develop, then we would be paying them to maintain the rainforest. Like, if that's what we actually cared about, if we cared about climate change, maintaining the rainforests, and the development of the Congolese, we would be paying them to maintain the rainforest. That we like that the American government, that the international government would basically say, we are going to give you the money that the fossil fuel industry is going to give you to destroy the rainforest to keep the rainforest intact. That's what we would actually do. And we would treat the rainforest as something worth preserving, right? But we're not going to do that because we don't actually care about climate change and we don't care about the rainforest. We care about, like, Kim Kardashian and shit. That's what we care about. I know there are many indigenous people who are livid that he did not mention the doctrine of discovery. I also implied that the indigenous people suffering was in the past. Yeah. Fair critiques, straight up. And it could be said that, like, perhaps this apology is being done in order to deflate any mention of those very things, right? Like, let's get real. What is the doctrine of discovery? Yeah. The doctrine of discovery includes all doctrines, policies, and practices based on advocating superiority of peoples or individuals on the basis of national origin, on racial, religious, or ethnic or cultural differences. The doctrine of discovery has had an enduring impact on indigenous peoples and the right to redress. Yeah. So just don't talk about it, right? Come in, make an apology, don't mention it. Maybe they want to catch it. Well, look, it's the same argument that's used by slavers, by everybody, right? Like, no, we can't eliminate slavery. We can't do that. Look at how much money we're making, right? Look how good everything is. The federal government bailing out Uniper. Yeah, so we can bail out a failed company for fucking 15 billion euros, but we can't help people. Yeah, someone creates a hydro-powered car. That someone, after 2 days, dies in an accident. CIA. I wonder who did that. Fossil fuel billionaires. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, dude. Mystic's got to figure it out. Like, I say it over and over again until somebody stops me. The CIA is the largest terrorist organization on the planet. It's not even close. Right? It's not even close. Like, worse than the Taliban, worse than Hezbollah. Pick a terrorist organization. The CIA is 10 times worse than that. And it's not close. Like, it's ridiculous. All right, sorry about this, guys. Bing. Sorry. Ads. Someone's gotta pay for it. Please consider liking and sharing and subscribing, right? The Patreon is down below. If you're only donating $1, maybe make it $2, right? If you're not donating, maybe think about donating. I know I would appreciate it. Gets you into the Discord. Wait, I'm not understanding the doctrine? Just Google it, bud. There's lots of information out there for the doctrine of discovery. It's like so you think about the oh, for God's sakes, come on, John. The Indian Act. I don't know why that was a struggle. The Indian Act is part of the doctrine of discovery, right? Like it's literally the documents where the white population says we should destroy the indigenous population, right? And the indigenous community has taken these documents and put them all together into like a Bible, basically, and been like, there it is, the doctrine of discovery, right? And so for the Pope to come with an apology and not actually acknowledge, like, if the point of apologizing is to acknowledge that it happened and that it's all about acknowledgement and there's a truth and reconciliation through acknowledgement, well, one assumes that part of that acknowledgement is acknowledging the existence of this document so that people understand that it exists, right? And to give credibility to the doctrine of discovery. And by not mentioning it, it's just pushing it aside in the hopes that it will just disappear, right? I think that's a fair critique. Like, to pretend like this Pope is not, like, deeply entrenched in the politics of this is asinine, right? Pope's busy, John. A lot of exorcisms to get to. I wish he'd start doing them. We could start with the American Congress. They're obviously possessed by demons. Like, there's no... The other explanation is just, like, pathetic. I would actually, like... if we all found out that the members of Congress and the Senate and the presidency and all those kind of guys were just literally possessed by demons, I would be like, oh, it all makes sense. Oh, okay. Because the other explanation is so pathetic. Like, we're such a pathetic people. This idea that, like, America is great and that there's greatness in North America and that Western culture and Western civilization is something to be cherished. And, oh, it's so... These people they want to destroy Western civilization. We need to protect it and all this kind of stuff. What a pathetic group of utter losers. Like, just a pathetic group of utter losers walking around saying that there's anything worth salvaging in a society that's literally creating an apocalypse. Like, Western civilization is a total pathetic joke. It would be better for us if it turned out that it was demon possession. It would be better for us. At least history could then be like, yeah, there was a group of interdimensional beings who possessed the leadership of America and made them act in a crazed way in an effort to destroy the planet, right? And then the Pope came in and banished them all with his popiness. Like, that's a fucking cool-ass story that would have everybody go like, oh, fuck! Oh, man, that's crazy! Right? But what's actually happening is that just these people are psychopaths. They've been corrupted by wealth. They don't give a shit about anything else other than themselves. And they're going to destroy their precious quote-unquote Western civilization for fucking money. For something we invented in the first place. Literally, there's a building where we print it. And we're all just like, gotta get the money. Gotta get the money. Oh, look, everybody, look at my screen. The number is higher. The number is higher than their number, so I'm the guy. Like, it's pathetic. We're a pathetic people. I argue that the capital system is the devil system. The right-winger hates that so much, but it's true. If you actually go through, like, Christian theology and listen to the theologians of the past, the ethos of someone like, of the individualists, right? The ethos of someone like Jordan Peterson is the ethos of the devil in like John Milton's Paradise Lost, right? In John Milton's Paradise Lost, the devil is all about like your own individuality is what matters the most. It's better to rule in hell than serve in heaven. These sorts of ideas are very present in John Milton's Paradise Lost and are said by the devil, right? And it makes total sense that someone as on the lunatic fringe as Peterson would align so closely with these sort of demonic precepts that exist throughout theological writings, right? Like, one of the great like insanities of someone like Peterson is that people actually think he's like a godly man who cares about Christianity. Like, he doesn't care at all. He hasn't read the book. He doesn't know anything about it, right? He can't talk about it. If you challenge him on it, he crumples instantly. Like, he doesn't know anything about the book. Clearly, he's never read it, right? He just wants people to be convinced because there's a whole sea of total gullible rubes that are willing to buy in to this idea that, oh, if I do good things, God will, or if I worship, God will reward me and all this kind of shit. It's like literally the book tells you no, straight up. Like, if you actually read the book, like, there's nothing in the Bible that should convince you that God will reward you for being a good Christian. Like, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. The Bible is pretty explicit in telling you, if God wants to fuck you up, he will. Like, read the book of Job, right? If God wants to fuck you up, he will. He'll do it for a dare. Like, he'll do it on a joke, like as a prank. Like, he doesn't give a fuck about you. Like, not really. Like my absolute bare bones favorite moment in the entire Bible is, as a bet, God fucks Job up, kills his entire family, destroys all his property, makes him homeless in the streets, inflicts him with boils, even on the bottom of his feet. They explicitly make a point of telling you that they've got boils on the bottom of his feet, so he can find no relief from having boils all over his fucking body, right? His friends come and say all of the shit to him that you hear today. Well, you must have done something wrong. You must have done something to earn the ire of God, right? There must be some kind of a thing. That it must be your fault. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Bootstrap yourself. You can do better. And Job's response is very clearly, get fucked. God is bigger and stronger and more powerful than any of that, and he owned me. Clearly. And then his friends eventually fuck off. And then, as the story goes, God shows up, and Job and God have a conversation. And Job says, yo, dude, this sucks. Why'd you do this? I hate this. And God's response is literally, fuck you, you worthless little ant. Who gives a shit what you think? Fuck you. And Job goes, yeah. And that's the end of the book. Like, this idea, the prosperity gospel that exists within the people who call themselves Christian, where if you're a good follower and you're a good Christian, God will reward you with good things. The implication, of course, being that if you're experiencing bad things, that means you're a bad person, right? That's the implication that comes out of this. It's heretical. It has no place in any of the scriptures whatsoever. It's not backed by anybody. Christ himself would spurn this idea. It's ridiculous. And yet it's the ethos of the Christian right at the moment. Peterson, on his podcast, made a Bible series using his psychology to explain those events. No, it's just babble, though. Like, if you listen to that shit, it literally is just babble. It's just straight up like, the dragon of chaos, and we'll meet the feminine sea of the spirit of and that will, and it's supposed to mean something, but like it's just like a Rorschach. What Peterson does is he creates like a Rorschach test for people to get out of it what they want, right? That he creates like a little puzzle for people to try to solve, and of course when people solve it, they come out with the answer that they want, right? That's why he's effective. It's just another form of pandering to people, right? Like, people are confused and lost, and so they want to take that confusion, and funnel it down this thing, and he must matter. I see him everywhere. So completely ignoring the fact that he's obviously got enormous billionaire backers who are just jamming him in your face as often as possible. So you'll get caught in this fucking spiral of ridiculousness. So you can end at the bottom of it going, and capitalism is good. That's the whole point. The whole point is that you'll spend years and years of your life whiling away down this ridiculous, absurd maze, trying to discover something, but the bottom of it is just, and capitalism is good. Like, that's the whole thing. Oh man, I'm making a potluck over there. Not a potluck, a slow cooker. I'm making a chili, and it's smelling really good. Oh yeah, it's gonna be good. Yes, yes, yes. Just 27 billionaires spent $90 million to buy GOP Congress, says a report. A few dozen billionaires are spending tens of millions of dollars on the 2022 midterm elections, mostly to support Republican candidates, including many who have parroted the dangerous lie that the 2020 presidential election was stolen, in a bid to ensure that Congress is full of lawmakers willing to make their wealthy benefactors even richer, according to a fresh analysis. Titled, Billionaires Buying Elections, the report from Americans for Tax Fairness details how billionaires are increasingly using their personal fortune and the profit of connected corporations to drown out regular voices and elect hand-picked candidates who further rig the nation's economy, especially the tax system. Why this report is actually very interesting is that, like, Americans for Tax Fairness is like the Fraser Institute, right? It's an organization that exists to ensure that the government always keeps taxes as low as possible, that the government always responds to, like, the wealthy people in the society, that if we give all the money to the rich, it'll trickle down into the economy, and all that kind of crazy nonsense bullshit, right? And so when they come out with this idea, billionaires are increasingly using their personal fortunes and all that kind of stuff, it's actually a big deal. It would be like the Fraser Institute standing up and being like, man, billionaires are using their money to buy political elections. Who could have foreseen such a thing? Right? Like, this is the childishness of these groups. Is that they're like, their whole ethos is, we should give all the money to a handful of people and that'll trickle down and it'll be fine. What? They're using their money in order to buy our elections? What? What? Like, yeah, bro. Obviously. Like, obviously they're going to do that. Did you not think that they were going to do that? Is it because you're a naive little baby child? Clearly. Your connection seems weaker today. Can't read the comments in the video window below your talking head. I don't know what to tell you about that, bud. I don't know what to tell you about that. That's fucking life, isn't it? Maybe that's how they're going to get me. Maybe that's how the CIA is going to do it. They're just going to steadily ratchet it until finally you won't be able to see anything, right? It'll just be a one big fuzz. It's okay. I read the comments out, so just accept that's the case, right? Eventually, it'll just be my voice anyway, right? That's how it's going to go. And then eventually they'll chase me off the YouTube platform entirely, and I'll just be doing the show through, like, the Discord, right? Eventually they chase me off of these platforms. Like we will see a Neo-McCarthy era where anyone who is espousing any kind of doctrine will be pushed off these platforms. And I expect that's going to be me and like people like Jimmy Dore and people like, it's already happening to people around him, right? Like these people are going to be pushed off the platforms completely and sequestered and eliminated. It is going to happen. You need to start having an in-person group. That's called a protest, Barnabas. That's what that is. I'm not interested in doing a book club. Like, really. Like, I'm not interested in that. I'm desperately worried that there are organizations, and I don't want to name the organizations now because I would like them to come out to these protests. But I'm desperately concerned that there's just, like, book clubs forming, and that they're happy just being book clubs. And that nobody is going to, like, actually, like, come out and do the thing that needs to be done. Right? Top billionaire donors to congressional super PACs include hedge fund magnate Ken Griffin, who's given more than $28.5 million, and private equity mogul Steven Schwartzman, who's pumped $20 million into the GOP's two super PACs. Who could have seen it coming? The combined net worth of the nation's roughly 750 billionaires surged by $2 trillion, or 70%, during the first 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. The collective wealth of the 27 billionaires bankrolling the GOP's super PACs alone soared by $82.4 billion over that time period, meaning that the $89.4 million they have donated to CLF and SLF constitutes just over 0.1% of their overall pandemic-era gains. What? Billionaires buying... But you can boo his Jimmy Dore all you want, but his reporting on the Ukraine crisis has been right on the money. Like, right on the money. I diverge from him on his COVID stuff. I think that he goes a little too hard in the paint in the COVID shit. But his reporting on the Ukraine crisis has been spot on the money. It's a miracle to me he hasn't been pulled off already. I think the only reason he gets away with it is because he's a bit too big. He's got 1 million followers, right? So, like, it's and ultimately, I respect Jimmy Dore. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. He goes to protests. He talks about protests. He talks about the strike, right? He does all that kind of shit. Can we disagree on certain things? Absolutely. But I respect Jimmy Dore. I respect him a lot. And I'm not going to give up on him just because, like, of his kind of kooky COVID position. Which he has, certainly. Yeah, notably Peter Thiel, a co-founder of PayPal, who's worth about $4 billion and is openly opposed to democracy, has been spending big on his preferred Republican candidates. Like, you know it's a crisis when Americans for Tax Fairness are reporting on this kind of shit. Look at this. Total billionaire contributions by election cycle. Okay, so this is 1998, right? 2000, it's like barely perceptible. 202, 24, 06, right? They only start really measuring it, and this is in by millions of dollars. So 2008, $16 million, suddenly 31. Then between 2010, 2012, it times by basically 10, 231, then triples in 2016 to 682, 611, and then suddenly, bam, 2020. Huge jump up. Huge jump up. $2 billion. Includes Bloomberg and Steyer's contributions to their own campaigns. Remember, Bloomberg ran in 2020, right? Huge jump ups. Right? And this number only gets bigger. Yeah, if we give all the money to the billionaires, if we give all the money to 10 people, then they will use that money. And they will trickle it back down into the economy. Well, they're trickling it back down into the economy, all right, by buying elections. Like, this should convince you, more than anything, that the American electoral system is fraudulent. That it has been completely capitulated. Yeah, I wonder who a fascist would vote for, yeah. Not book clubs, not protests, but a weekly group of Marxists who talk and plan. Yeah. I mean, socialist action is that. That if I were to organize with that group, it would probably be socialist action. Because they are actually, like, running candidates. They're actually, like, going to protests, right? I just don't really respect a group if their whole thing is let's get together and like talk about, you know, the state and revolution. I'm like, okay, great, but like, are you actually going to do it? Yeah, if they take me off YouTube, that's fair. That's fair. Here's one I wanted to read, because there's a narrative that's going through where people are trying to convince themselves that prices are going to come down and then houses are going to sell. That there's going to be a big market correction, right? But Canadian real estate expected to see a historic correction. Biggest drop ever. That's from the RBC, right? Canada's largest bank sees the country's real estate bubble popping like no other. Last week we explained RBC is getting ready to revise its forecast lower, and they made it official today. The bank explained to investors the correction will be larger than previously expected. They're now forecasting the largest downturn in history for both sales and price. No reason to panic, though. The bank says this should be welcome after the past 2 years. Canadian real estate is facing much bigger headwinds than previously thought. It's facing significant headwinds due to inflation driving rates higher. But like, here's the thing, okay? Like, if the number comes down, the billionaires just won't sell. It's really that straightforward. If the number comes down, the billionaires just won't sell, right? They'll just keep the money. They'll keep the housing, right? Because while we see prices coming down, we also see simultaneously houses being delisted, right? So at the same time that your prices are coming down, the billionaires are just saying, oh, we won't sell them. Because this is the number that we're willing to part with. Because, fundamentally, they view the house as a form of currency exclusively, right? And they're not willing to trade the land and the house for a currency unless it's this much currency. And this much of your national currency, right? And so you can drop it however much you want. It doesn't mean they're going to sell, right? The problem is house hoarding. That's the problem. So I was listening in to some parent convo yesterday, and basically every friend of my dad who has money has now fucked him over. Yeah, that's capitalism. That's capitalism. Like, there's no such thing as alliances. There's no such thing. Everything is exclusively economic decision, right? Yep, new home and condo sales plummet despite rising prices, right? They're just not going to sell. They're just not going to sell. The word betrayal was used. Oh yeah, the classic, right? Look, anybody who has involved themselves in this capitalist system to any degree should be anticipating these forms of betrayal, right? We venerate these people. Take a look at the Mark Zuckerberg movie. We outright made a movie about Mark Zuckerberg where it showed him completely betraying everyone around him, and he's a billionaire for it. So what's the moral? What's the moral of the story? Just fuck everybody over. Lie, cheat, and steal. There's no like, go the Andrew Tate route. Become the best grifter you can possibly become. Because it's the only path forward for many people. Like, if you want the money and the wealth and the prestige and all that kind of stuff, if that's what you're here for, if you want to serve and worship Moloch, right? Well, you don't have friends if you do that, right? All you have is class peers. That's all you have, right? You either have people around you who also have wealth and they also betrayed people, right? And so you have peers, or you don't have that, which means you don't get the money, the wealth, and the prestige, right? It's that simple. This was his high school friend. My grandfather worked for his dad. He, my dad's friend, were handed the company from their dad. Their two brothers were coke addicts. Oh yeah, the classic shit, right? What? Wealthy inheritors who are coke addicts? I've never heard of such a story, except literally the mayor and premier of this province. and city. I love this article. This article's so cute, dude. You want more evidence that the whole fucking thing's coming apart? Oil and gas industry could get more time to meet 2030 emissions target, minister says. This fucking fraud, this total sellout, like literally used to be a Greenpeace activist and is now just completely capitulated to capital, right? He doesn't give a fuck about the environment or anything. They've paid him off. He took the paycheck. Canada's environment minister says the federal government could give oil and gas companies extra time instead of, nationalizing them and arresting them, which is what should actually happen. We recognize that some of the measures that will need to be achieved to those deep emissions reductions might require more time than we have between now and 2030, especially if you don't care about them, right? Especially if you're just pretending. Like that's the important thing to remember about these liberals. They don't actually care. They don't actually care. They care that you think they care. That's it. And here's your case in point, right? We need to swiftly lower emissions. We could be a little less swift. Oh, we could be a little less swift than that. Like, they don't give a fuck. They don't care. If they could get away with not doing it, they would. Real straightforward. Yeah, capitalist housing markets are a scam. That's absolutely the truth, man. Better. That the idea that we can take, like, markets work in luxury situations. If it's something that people don't need, if a person can afford to walk away from the table, if they can say no, right? If a person can say no, then you can have whatever market you like, right? But if people can't say no, right? People need housing. They can't say no to housing, right? Then you've erected a slave system, is what you've done. And you can charge what you like, right? I'm not saying today it's necessarily going to be, listen, I'm not saying today it's necessarily going to be 2032, but the companies have said it could be 10 years, which would bring us to 2032. And just watch. Just watch how this goes, guys. Just watch how this goes. As we approach 2030, they'll be nowhere close to it because they never cared in the first place. It was always a grift, right? And then the government will be like, oh, we got to push it out a little bit farther. It's difficult to do these things, especially when you're not trying and you're just grifting, right? Oh, we got it. It'll be a little bit longer than this, oh, God, oh, my. Just watch it happen. Just watch it happen. Well, and truth be told, by the time 2030 runs around, it's going to be a conservative government. And the conservatives will be just like, yeah, get fucked and die. That's their solution. The federal government's climate plan to reach net zero emissions by 2050 has an interim goal to cut emissions across all sectors, 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by 2030. It's such fucking bullshit. I just don't know why anyone would actually believe this. Like, no, they don't. They're not actually interested. It's an overt con. This guy's an obvious sellout who has been put in place because he has some credibility. He has like cred for being like a Greenpeace activist or whatever, but he's obviously bought. Like, it's not going to work because they're not interested in it working, right? If they were interested in it working, they'd shut the lights off at Dundas and at Yonge and Dundas, right? They turn the fucking fossil fuel shit down. They'd stop people from using private jets. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. Honestly, I think the best capitalist would be a Marxist who truly understands the system. Well, I mean, there is no such thing as a good capitalist. But then again, Michael Hudson was hired by the Pentagon. I mean, if you actually understand how the structure of the system works, I think about somebody like, what's his name, Peter... There's one capitalist who actually talks like a Marxist, but his goal is to just make as much money as possible. Like, he doesn't actually care about egalitarianism or helping anybody or any of that. He tells the truth about what's happening in the capitalist structure because he understands that if you don't, then you lose a lot of money, right? And he's kind of like that. Although he does the same kind of shit that they all do, which is scapegoat the government, and even though, like, literally, who's buying the government, right? It's the capitalists. Conservatives only get into government to pocket tax money. Why else would small government people be in government? Yeah. No, it's fucking ridiculous. This is from The Hill, nearly 1 in 3 Americans say it may soon be necessary to take up arms against the government. Nearly 1 in 3 Americans say it may soon be necessary to take up arms against the government. A majority of Americans say the U.S. government is corrupt, and almost a third say it may soon be necessary to take up arms against it, according to a new poll from the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics. 2/3 of Republicans and independents say the government is corrupt and rigged against everyday people like me, according to the poll, compared to 51% of liberal voters. 2/3 of Republicans and independents say the government is corrupt and rigged against everyday people like me, according to the poll, compared to 51% of liberal voters. So there's a consensus. Liberals are slightly less in step, but not by enough. Majorities of liberal voters and supermajorities of Republicans and independents say the government is corrupt and rigged against everyday people like me. 28% of all voters, including 37% of gun owners, agreed it may be necessary at some point soon for citizens to take up arms against the government, a view held by around 35% of Republicans and around 35% of independents. 1 in 5 Democrats, so 20%, concurred. The findings come after a House committee investigating the January 6, 2021 riots in the U.S. Capitol wrapped up its final hearing for the summer, seeking to place former President Trump at the heart of efforts to overturn the 2020 election. The panel also said Trump readily accepted and even encouraged the attack from his supporters, watching violence play out on television. Despite the hearings, Trump still enjoys broad support amongst Republicans, who are more concerned about inflation, education, and crime than about January 6th. About 56% of Americans say elections are fair and accurate, but that number falls to 33% among Republicans, according to the poll. The division between conservatives and liberals across the country is only growing, and a quarter of Americans say they have lost friends over politics. More than 70% of Republicans and more than 70% of Democrats both agree the other side are generally bullies who want to impose their political beliefs on those who disagree. You see how the Civil War is shaping up? Republicans versus Democrats. Fight amongst yourselves. Don't look up. Don't look up. Fight amongst yourselves. And half of all Americans believe the other side is misinformed about politics because of where they get their information and news. So straight up, the CIA policy of division in the populace has completely worked. It's been a complete victory. But Jordan Peterson said food and shelter is not a human right. Yeah, this guy holding onto a Bible that tells him to give his money to the poor. Like, frauds say lots of things. Libcons are crony capitalist parties playing a relay race with our government and chicken with our lives. Yep. Good to see you, Ben. Trying to be polite here. More people will die because of Jimmy Dore's anti-vax influence. Jimmy will have a neglectable influence on the outcome of war, but people won't get vaccinated because of it. Yeah, I think that's probably true, Adam. Like, yeah. What am I going to do about it? Like, what am I going to do about it? Like, it doesn't change the fact, right? It doesn't change the fact that his reporting on the Ukraine war has been spot on. Like, this is life. This is life. There can't be a civil war unless they have defined territories. There's no way there will be a civil war, in my humble opinion. Oh, Ben. So, what's convinced you of this, bud? Because, like, if that's your definition of a civil war, that there must be defined territories. So it isn't until someone has claimed land that it's a civil war. Well, that's easily done, right? Like, once an armed group storm into a building and claim it to be theirs, that's a civil war then, right? Like, so if the January 6th insurrectionists had have stayed, created barricades, and declared that as theirs, that would have been a civil war, right? Seems to me pretty likely. Like, seems to me like that kind of stuff's going to start happening on a larger and larger basis. And there's going to be lots of different degrees of this, right? Like, there's going to be lots of different things that happen. So, like, I suspect to see the balkanization of America within my lifetime, right? I expect to see states break off. The way that Brexit broke, like the way that Britain broke off from the euro, right? When is the event? August 1st, 4 p.m., Bloor and Bedford. August 1st, 4 p.m., Bloor and Bedford. Good to see you, Victini. Hope you'll be there. Bring friends. Bring everybody you know. Bring your entire workforce. Bring everybody. Like, we've got, at the bare bones minimum, we have to start meeting in person. You got it, bud. We've got to start meeting in person. We've got to start looking and seeing who is actually willing to come out to these events. We've got to start building this kind of stuff. 2026, when U.S. is formally dissolved. Oh, the U.S. will never formally dissolve. Like, that's something that takes hundreds of years. But, like, I take a look at California. It's already on the ballot. Like, for secession from the federal government's already on the ballot. It's already got pretty big support. Like, and as things get worse, and as this thing degrades more and more, it's going to become more appealing for people. Like, I think it is going to happen in my lifetime. And that balkanization is going to be part of the unfolding civil war that we're obviously seeing. Like, we have a story. I wish I had the article in front of me, but there was a story about in Dallas, Texas. The police were going to clear out a homeless encampment, and armed activists showed up, and basically were just like, "No, you're not," and the police left because it's like, there you go. Well, what happens if the police shoot? Right? Yeah, Texas. Well, there you go. I just gave you the point for point how that would happen, Ben. Right? That you've got homeless encampments set up in Dallas. The police show up to clear them, and activists show up with guns and say to the cops, "Okay, start." Well, what happens if they do? Isn't that your civil war right there? Right? Isn't that the homeless people claiming territory? How does it work, state guard and militia versus the U.S. military? Oh my God. That'd be a whole other ball of wax, dude. That's a straight up revolution. Like, if state guards and militias start fighting against the federal government, like federal military, like that's straight up revolution. July 30th, Mississauga, Dundas, and Huron, Ontario, 2 p.m. Socialist candidates for municipal government need your support. It's Tulsa. This time the other is the port. Sorry, Victini. July 30th, Mississauga, Dundas, and Huron, Ontario, 2 p.m. Is this a gathering? If this is a gathering, I wouldn't mind coming to this, dude. Like, although Mississauga's way out for me. Dundas and Huron, Ontario. Yeah, it's like way on the other side of town, but I think I could get there. 2 p.m.? July 30th. Is that the weekend? July, yep. Sorry, dude. I'm in capitalism. I'm in capitalism, dude. This is the reason why I'm the worst at actually organizing and all this. I hate it. I really do. Like, everybody wants to do stuff Saturday, Sunday. That's when everybody wants to do stuff. And I'm literally like, I'm working, and I have to. Like, it's my, like, I feel like I need to get a better job. I need to get a new job. I need to restructure all of this because the actual like going around and being part of these protest movements and organizing with these protest movements, I'm really seeing it's like, oh, everybody wants to do like evenings, weekends. That's what everybody else is doing. And I'm like, I work evenings and weekends. Like I work then. That's my life. And I kind of take a little bit of solace because I view myself as an artist, and I'm trying to be more involved in the music scene here in Toronto. I go to open mics. I'm trying to become that part of it and do like protest music and all that. But at the same time, like I see that there needs to be like an organizer. There needs to be some organization. There needs to be more. And I'm just trying to drive people to a place. But at the same time, I've got to get like fucking money. You know, I got to get fucking money. And it's just so fucking annoying. Because like, I want to come. Like Socialist Action always has like, come to our thing. It's 7 p.m. I'm like, I'm fucking streaming. Like, come to our thing. It's in the afternoon on a Saturday. I'm like, I'm fucking working. Like, I'm just always caught in this like perpetual nightmare scape of like not being able to actually connect with people because everybody else's schedule is different than mine, and my life is so erratic and odd and strange that I find it so difficult to fit in. I've always found it so difficult to fit in with what everybody is doing, and I'm just like, it kills me. Like, it just fucking kills me. Like, I would love to come to that, dude. I would love to be there. I would love to give my support. I'm happy to tell people about it. I'm happy to promote it. Please, if you're in the Toronto region, think about going, right? We need more support. What Victini is part of is he's one of the candidates for the Municipal Socialist Alliance, which is an outcropping of Socialist Action that is running candidates in municipalities throughout Toronto in order to try and get anybody in any position of power to actually do something about this fucking catastrophe that we're facing. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Victini, what do you think about Ford giving the mayor's office executive power? Right? Yeah, John, you don't need a better job. You need more jobs. Well, thanks, Victini. I appreciate that, bud. It's easy to dehumanize working peoples of other country, but to get them to kill their friends and family en masse? Yeah. Ugh. That's the plan. No time for revolution. Only work and spend. Yeah. Killing in the name of... You know what? Speaking of songs, I want to play a song. I'm gonna play this song. Yeah, let's do it at the high. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm old? I look up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. Everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point in feeding this machine if it won't make the world one day my maker I will meet. When death's sweet kiss comes to sweep me off my feet, I hope by then we've learned a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice. Antarctica is covered in ice. And even now, I know that we can do it. I know that we can do it. Even though the whole system we live in is utterly corrupted, run by idiots and psychopaths, I know that we can do it. Because the solution to the problem could not be easier. We're in a fight with a force that is overwhelmingly powerful. The earth created a garden for us to live in. It created us. It is obviously far more powerful than we are. It is more than capable of healing itself. Thank you very much. And if we don't cooperate with its wishes, then it will destroy us. And then get on with the process of healing itself and moving on without us. And if we want to be here to witness the absolute miracle of the earth healing itself, all we have to do is stop. People say to me, "Hey, where's the protest music?" I hear this every so often. It's odd there's no protest music. Well, the protest music is being poured into lattes. That's what's happening. The protest music is being poured into lattes. And people can't, artists can't exist in this environment. They can't get a moment to sit down and actually find the creative spirit and then pour that creative spirit into music or onto the canvas or into dance or something, because they're pouring it into fucking lattes so that they can get a roof over their head and eat. We're a deeply childish people. We're a deeply childish people where we value getting little snacky snacks and little noms more than we value allowing people to express anything meaningful about what existence is, and what it is to be a human being living in the world. And it's dumb as shit that after I do all this, I gotta go like this. Gotta hit this stupid fucking button and inflict that shit on you guys. Why? So that I can get like some 5 cents or something. Right? So that I can get a fucking roof over my head. I think it's the dumbest shit in life. Like, make sure you think about buying a t-shirt. You want to buy a t-shirt? We got t-shirts for you. Hey, you know what would help you not have such smelly feet? Put on these Dr. Scholl's. I'm a doctor. So fucking dumb. We're just fucking dumb. And the question for me really is starting to become like, are we too dumb? Like, are we too dumb to actually be what it is obvious that we are, which is the voice of reality? Like, that's obviously what we are. Like, we have the capacity to articulate things from an abstract space to one another to be understood and build upon them. We obviously have this capacity that is unique, and coupled with the fact that we can alter our reality around us. But the trouble is that it looks to me like we are like one of the early iterations of this. The process of the Earth attempting to discover itself. And really, I think we're too dumb. I think we're too stupid. That we have mistaken our ability to build things for intelligence. And how do I know that we're too stupid? We have such clear, obvious solutions in front of us, but we can't do it because we're worshiping paper. Not even paper, like digital numbers on a screen. We're literally worshiping bullshit. No, I shouldn't say bullshit. Bullshit's useful. You can do something with bullshit. We're worshiping a concept. We're worshiping a fucking idea. We might as well be worshiping the god Moloch for all it fucking matters. Like this, we're literally committing suicide for a fucking idol. It's a death cult that we're in. That's so stupid. I can't think of a stupider thing to do than what we're doing now. So I say bring on the Dadaism. Bring on the cleansing of this society. This society needs to be cleansed completely of all of this bullshit. All of this superhero garbage. All of this fascist worship. All like these fucking worthless leaders, these billionaires. The whole, like, we would be better off if we literally reset everything. If we literally said, billionaires go away, they're gone, we just reset the entire currency. We would be better off for it than what we're doing now. Like this crazed madness that we have committed to. And we have committed to it. Like, we are committed to the idea of destroying ourselves and our children and the likelihood for any rational future. Like, and why? Good fucking question. I shared a story yesterday that included this quote. Artists, after all, are the canaries in the coal mine that point us to look at things that society is not grappling with the way it should be. Yeah. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That what the true artist does is they take something that isn't being articulated, but is thought, that the populace does believe it, and does think it. And they take it and they articulate it back to the society. That's fundamentally what the artist is doing. And that's true across the board. So if it's dance, if it's movies, if it's film, television, paintings, right? Or even something like this, which I don't know what to describe this as. Podcast, I guess? I don't know. But articulating back to the public what the public is thinking. Capitalism and art is an interesting topic, of course. What do you think happens to the artistic tradition as capitalistic development intensifies? Well, all art, just like everything, like the religious institutions, everything, bends the knee to the powerful. And so, take a look at Nazi Germany, and you'll have your answer. What happens to the artistic tradition as capitalist development intensifies? It starts to create fascist propaganda. Explicitly fascist propaganda. I've talked about this before, right? That the art that begins to come out of the society is explicitly fascist. And unabashedly so. Literally, the hero of the piece murders Jews. And we're all supposed to be like, yeah, about it. And you can see within the Nazis themselves, the Nazis understood very explicitly that presenting a strong artistic vision is absolutely crucial to maintaining cultural power and authority, right? The Nazi swastika itself is an enormously artistic and powerful symbol. The costumes that the Nazis wore, the fashion of the Nazi groups, they understood the power of the uniforms that they wore, of the outfits that they wore. They understood that it was important for them to present themselves in this artistic way, and that by itself had power. And what happens when fascism begins to rise, which is what happens as capitalist development intensifies, is that all of the artists that stand against the fascists are rounded up and killed, right? We saw that with Bonhoeffer. We saw that across the board, right? And the artists that are willing to bend the knee do everything they can to heighten and augment the power of the fascists. And so I talk a lot, Ben, about we get into conversations here about Warhammer 40K. And the reason why I've been talking a lot about Warhammer 40K is that I view Warhammer 40K as having the potential to become the next big thing in the society. Because it's got that kind of superhero sort of thing, it's got that sci-fi sort of feel about it. And all of the fascist elements that fascists want to put forward in the society exist within Warhammer 40K. It used to be satire, whereas when it's presented to us in this mainstream sense, it won't be satire. We're supposed to think the Space Marines are good. We're supposed to go along with them as they go around and eradicate subspecies and shit like that. In passing, you mentioned wanting to get rid of the superheroes. Do you think the rise of the superhero genre has something to do with this concept? I think two things about the superhero situation. Thing number one, I think that it shows how childish we are. That it was all well and good to be all about superheroes when you were 14, right? 15, right? But as you grow up, right, you put that stuff behind you. You care less about it because it's kid shit, right? It always was, right? It's Spider-Man is literally a teenager, right? Like all of these heroes, like when characters like Batman and Superman and all this kind of stuff were put into our mindscapes, they weren't put in there with any kind of conscious awareness of like what these people were. Like the guy that made Batman wasn't thinking like about Batman as a person. He was just like, yeah, it's a cartoon character. It's a man dressed like a bat, fights crime. Ha ha. That's where it was. And that kind of logic makes sense if you're a kid, right? If you're a kid and you're like, Batman, ha ha, right? And the fact that it keeps coming up again and again and again and keeps getting redone and represented, it's because we're caught in a cultural feedback loop that refuses to grow up and refuses to actually grow the society up. And that the society wants to be in a perpetual state of childishness. That we are children, fundamentally. Which is why we can't confront the climate change the climate change issue as adults. Because we're not adults. We're children that are constantly being represented with the shit that was popular when we were kids. Right? Another Star Wars. Another superhero movie, another Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Just another iteration of what was cool when we were kids. And we can't seem to put it aside and say, okay, but we're grown-ups now. Can we have a grown-up conversation about grown-up things? Can we make a grown-up movie that's grown up? Right? No. The answer to that is no. Everything just needs to be a rehash. And at this stage, I think it's being done on purpose, to keep us in this perpetual state of childishness. And then the second thing is that most of these have been hijacked to put forward explicit fascist propaganda. Like, if all you ever did was watched Marvel movies, you would be a fascist. Just straight up. Like, they're all powerful white men who are coming in to save the day and solve all the crises. All of their villains are cartoonish stereotypes. They're all like the wars, the endless wars that they're engaged in are self-justifying, right? Organizations like Hydra might as well be like Hezbollah or the Taliban, right? And if all you did was get your political ethos from Marvel movies, then Zig Heil you might as well. Right? Like you have to make an interpretation of the films to get there, but it's not hard to do that. Right? You're supposed to worship wealth for the sake of wealth. Someone like Tony Stark is completely permitted to do what he wants because he's a billionaire, right? Might makes right across the board, right? Like, why is Thor correct? Because he's powerful, right? That's it. Why is Bruce Banner sympathetic and we're supposed to all go along with it? Because he's powerful. Why is Captain America permitted in the society? Because he's powerful, right? Might makes right is the explicit backbone of those films. And we're supposed to cheer and hurrah. Not to mention the constant building up of the boogeyman, the fear of an external threat. Right? We need to subordinate ourselves to powerful entities because aliens could invade. Because Thanos, right? Which is an ethos that is explicitly done against like China and Russia, right? The boogeymaning of these big superpowers, right? I've always found it pretty sus how superheroes is an almost exclusively North American cultural phenomenon. Yeah, because it came, first of all, to defend it, like to act as devil's advocate. Those were our shit. Like, we made those. So it makes sense. But I do think that they end up being like a vehicle for a lot of fascist ideas. So throw Batman at climate change. Yeah, right. Batman's solution would be to try and like batarang the sun or something. The film industry's desire to continue making sequel upon shitty sequel is awful, but understandable. Yeah. Well, and now we're caught in a real shitbag of a situation where, and I get to kind of turn my ire against the culture itself and the populace itself, which is that the industries are beginning to make films they know are bad. Right? They're beginning to make films for people to hate on purpose. That they're not trying to make good art. They're not trying to make something that people will like. They want people to come and see it and hate it. and to watch it because they hate it. That's what they want. And as long as people go watch shit they hate, they'll keep making movies that are loathsome for people to hate. Instead of putting Fu Manchu, I guess, instead of putting manpower towards making new original ideas for film, the film industry knows it's safer investment to make the 500th shitty Star Wars remake. Yeah, at least people will show up. Yeah, and especially something like Star Wars, right? Like, people went. The only reason anyone went to see the final installment of this new trilogy was to see how badly they were going to fuck it up. It's literally the only reason anybody went. That nobody walked into that theater going, this is going to be great. They're really going to answer a bunch of questions, and this is going to have like a big catharsis moment, and they're going to really tie up some loose ends, and it's going to be a really satisfying end to a great trilogy. Like, literally nobody did that. Everybody walked into that theater going, man, how are they going to fuck this up? What fucking dumbass, moronic, idiotic bullshit are they going to put in front of us? So in the end, it was like watching a freak show, right? It was like watching a train crash, is what it was. Going to see that third movie. I didn't go see it in theater because I knew that's what it was going to be, and I wasn't interested in engaging in it. I wasn't going to give them my money for them to continue betraying the story. What they did to Luke Skywalker was one of the largest betrayals in cinematic history. Straight up, bare none, hands down. And not just to Luke Skywalker, but to Mark Hamill himself. It was a betrayal, just an utter knife in the back to the fans, to the people who worked on it, to everybody, to the very idea of storytelling itself. Like, that's how big a betrayal it was what they did to Luke Skywalker. They literally took one of the great American heroes, one of the greatest of the American heroes, and they utterly betrayed him in every single way, and said to all of the fans of Luke Skywalker and all of the fans who ever put any hope or idea into a figure like Luke Skywalker that, that's bullshit, because eventually they will become old, worthless, weak, pathetic, and then just die. Like, fuck you. Fuck you. John, if you don't mind, can I ask you a question about your spiritual religious views? Fire away, Mocked. Fire away, bud. We've only got 15 minutes left on the clock, but I might go long on this. Well, let's walk into the hoob. I love it. It's actually my number one favorite thing to talk about, Mocked. I just don't talk about it that often because I know that people get turned off by it pretty fast. There are still good movies out there for sure. They just aren't the ones that top the box office. Yeah, like you can find The Labor of Love, right? You can find the like, you can find people who are trying to actually make stuff because they want to actually say something, and they want to actually take something that exists within them and express it outwardly into the world. You can find that for sure. It's just few and far between, right? Why do I view God as the collection of all things? So the concept of God, right, is an acknowledgement that we live in a singular energy, that the theologians throughout Christian history and pre-Enlightenment are attempting to kind of make up an idea of what this is and what are we in, what is this thing that we are in. The secular scientists now, the quantum mechanicists, through mathematics, have shown that those theologians were actually correct, that we are in a singular energy, that we are not independent individual creatures that live independently of one another, that we are in fact a single entity, right? And this single entity is given the name God. And we understand that that entity, the singular energy that we all are, has its own intelligence. Like, just how, like, a red blood cell doesn't have the same experience of reality that we have. But if you didn't have red blood cells, you'd be in trouble. And if you offended the red blood cells, there would be trouble. So they are their own life form, but they are also part of the larger body that makes you. And so too are you, another entity that exists within another structure that is itself above you, and you can't perceive what it is. A red blood cell will never understand what this reality is. It can't. It just will never do that. And very much in the same way, we exist without an understanding of what exists above us. But we attempt to understand that, and we attempt to see what that is, so that we can understand that when we are talking to one another, I am not John the independent individual who exists by the force of his own volition and the power of all that kind of stuff. I am but one aspect of a larger entity that that sustains us and creates us, and that we exist within. And so when I'm talking to someone else, I fundamentally understand that we are both equals within the body that we call God. And the more you dig into that idea, the more humbling it becomes, because that extends to all other life forms, right? That my dog and I are equals. That a turtle just chilling out in the forest somewhere is equal to Einstein, as far as the energy is concerned, as far as the larger body is concerned, right? There's nothing grand or particularly unique or interesting between those life forms, and both have their validity, right? They're and this validity is the word where conservative types like your Peterson and Shapiro types will start being will start making the validity of capability, right? Well, a very tall person is taller and better than a shorter person. It's like no. It's a validity of existence. You are equally valid, right? And I hang on to these ideas. And one thing I think it's important for me to say when I talk about these things is it does not matter if they are true or not. I think that's a big thing to talk about. That your contemplation on these things is itself the point. That planting your flag and declaring I'll go to war and fight to die on this, and I'll exclude people and hate people because we disagree or we don't see eye to eye on these things. That's so beyond and beside the point, and actually contradicts the whole idea in the first place. What's more important is simply your contemplation on it, right? That's what matters the most. It's the journey, not the destination. And I think that this is important. It's important for us to ask. One of the things I think about all the time, right, is I think one of the worst questions that gets asked is, does God exist? I think it's a terrible question because it invites a misunderstanding of what's being talked about. I saw this happen with the new atheists and even the evangelicals they talked to, which I'm glad that they confronted those guys. But it became pretty clear that there was a semantic misunderstanding. The Great Spaghetti Monster, for example, is one of the great illustrations of this semantic misunderstanding. That the spaghetti monster is itself a being that lives within the confines of the universe, right? When the theologians are literally like, no, like when we talk about God, we're talking about the one energy that makes up all things. It is the creative force itself. That's what we're talking about. And why is it important, right? Why is it important to acknowledge that there is a one energy? And so the better question to ask, because quantum mechanicists have said this is one energy. We've got a mathematical model that shows that this is one energy. We've got a theory that says that this is one energy. So the more interesting question to me is the energy sentient? Is the energy alive? Intelligent? Does it have its own goals? How does it operate? What is it doing? Right? And fundamentally, understanding that we live in a singular energy, I think, is important, because then it makes you understand that we live in systems. Right? That it isn't just an individual individualizing his individualism, but that we live in a larger system. And if we defy what that system is saying to us, like we're doing with climate change, then it will destroy us. Pretty black and white. And my upbringing on Christianity, while it had a fundamentalist backing and that evangelical fundamentalism, I still believe very strongly that, or I still understand rather, that we live in a singular energy that is itself intelligent, that is itself sentient. Certainly, like, if I am made of that energy, right, and I consider myself intelligent and sentient, well, then the energy must be as intelligent and as sentient as I am. Just logically, it has to be the case, right? That the energy that's creating and sustaining me has the same capabilities and understandings that I do. But then it also has yours, and it also has everybody else's, right? And so it doesn't take a big leap to be like, well, then it probably has a collective consciousness, right? It has a collective understanding of what's going on. And then when you begin to layer onto that things like the internet, you begin to layer onto that things like this digital understanding, where we can open up portals to imagination and creativity and all of this kind of stuff. Like, you can see this creative consciousness sort of coming out of humanity. But if we don't pause for a minute and actually acknowledge it to one another, right? This is why things like nationalism and racism and xenophobia are so abhorrent. Because fundamentally you're saying of another aspect of the energy of God that you're inferior or subhuman or you are less than I am for X reason, which stands completely and totally in defiance of basic logic and reason. It can't possibly be the case that the truth, once you understand, and I use the word understand, I don't use the word believe. I don't like this word believe. Once you understand that we are a singular energy, that you and me and everybody else and the grass and the trees and the house and the dogs and the cars and the fossil fuel and all of this are all one thing. Literally. Well, then you treat the world differently. You treat the world differently. Because when you're talking to somebody, you're literally talking to yourself. Literally. You're talking to yourself. This is why Christ says things like love your neighbor as yourself. Because the real truth is that you're not loving your neighbor as yourself. You are your neighbor. That your neighbor's existence and your existence are part of the same energy. And it's impossible to hold on to racism. It's impossible to hold on to xenophobia. It's impossible to hold on to these ideas if you have in your head, but that's me. And if you see yourself in them. And that's the root of empathy. That's the root of compassion. That's the root of these things that we're working so hard in this culture to obliterate. And this concept of this energy we exist in also itself being intelligent and sentient and capable of pursuing its own goals, we don't like to think about that because it subserviates us, as we should. We should be subservient to it. It created us and is more than capable of destroying us. We should respect it, and we don't. And once you understand that, well, are you gonna throw a bunch of toxic waste into the river if you actually believe that the river itself is alive and that the system that's part of is part of a larger and grander system that is itself above you? Probably not. Probably not. But what we've done is we've erected a false god, right? We've erected a false god called money, or Moloch, if you prefer, if you want to use the biblical texts. And we're worshiping money. And instead of looking at the universe itself and understanding that we are part of that, and that is the truth, that is reality, that energy is what sustains us, and we should live with that energy first and foremost. And instead of subserviating ourselves to that idea, we've subserviated ourselves to money. Something we literally created out of nothing. We took shiny rocks and said this has value. And we have this concept of value, and that what actually matters in this reality is proving to people who have money that your existence matters. When obviously your existence matters. You were created by a force of existence that is far more powerful and far grander than anything else that we could even possibly even contemplate. But rather than subserviate ourselves to the energy that's actually created us, we subserviate ourselves to money. It's an abomination. It's demonic. Thank you very much. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this subject. We'll think about what you said. Yeah, and loop back around on me, Mocked. It's the number one thing that I like to talk about, but I don't talk about it for very long because I worry that people will start seeing me as a kook. I worry that people will start seeing me as a lunatic, right? That when I talk about the communist stuff, at least I'm like entrenching myself in something that I think most people can kind of go along with, and the disagreement is with like capitalists upon like materialist lines and all that kind of stuff. But you start talking about religious stuff, and like I consider myself to be a secular theist. I think that's something that annoys people, calling myself a secular theist, because I got to be really clear. Like I don't believe any of this. I understand it. Like there isn't a moment of belief. There's no leap. I hated that. Listening to religious people talk about the leap. Listening to people talk about the leap of faith and all that kind of stuff. Right? That's how you know that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Right? I don't believe what I'm talking about. I understand what I'm talking about. What happens when you die? Who fuck knows? You die. That's it. Like, your body rejoins the greater energy. You become one with the universe. I generally, Mark Twain had a phrase that I think really encapsulates my feelings on this, Ben, which is, I didn't much mind it when I wasn't born. I don't think I'll much mind it when I'm dead. And I think that's the long and short of it. That whatever this is, whatever John is, will cease to exist in any meaningful capacity. And whatever energy it took to maintain John will be used for something else. That's fine. I don't need to conjure up some imagination idea of heaven and hell and all that kind of stuff. That's so well beyond me. That's so well beyond my capacity to even like I also am just like, what kind of dumb, petty bullshit is this idea that, oh, if you do bad here, then God's gonna send you to hell forever? I'm like, what? Why? For what purpose? To what end? Like, it turns God into like it just turns like God into a fucking nightmare. Although there are definitely things that you have to accept that I think are terrifying. Like, the only theory of why there is something rather than nothing, there is only one theory, which is that there needed to be a grand mover or an initial movement of some kind to go from an inert space into a moving space. And through that movement, like, all things are created, right? That whatever's responsible for sustaining this universe that we live in, right, is a creative force, first and foremost. That the way I view it is that if you watch an insect get born, or an animal get born, or anything get born, the first thing they pursue is the question, what am I capable of doing? Right? They immediately begin a path of discovery. They immediately begin a path of self-discovery. What are these? What can I do? You look at a deer or a horse, and immediately they're up on their legs. They're trying to figure out themselves out. All of that kind of stuff, right? It's immediate, and every creature does it. It's one of the rare cases where you can say fairly clearly that's universally true. Every creature immediately begins to investigate its surroundings and itself and tries to figure out what it's capable of doing. And so if you imbue the creative force itself with this idea, and it shifts from nothing to something, so unaware to awareness, well, what it's capable of doing is creating anything logical that can be created, right? And so it does it. Like, it just does it. It doesn't think about doing it. It doesn't go, well, what can I make? Well, let me make this and let me make that. It just creates it. No, even babies do it. It's just that when human babies come out, they're weak, right? They're so weak that they're not capable of doing much. And so for them, their investigations are literally like, what are these? I have fingers. I'm putting that in my mouth, right? So their investigations are worse because they are worse. But it's the same energy. It's the same thing. And and so if the force of energy that sustains us and creates all things has the same kind of ethos, which is universally true here, so I don't see why it shouldn't be there, then it does that. And it creates all things that are logically possible to be created. Right? So here's where it gets into the terror. Here's where it becomes horrifying. Because all it's doing is creating everything that can logically be created. Which means that it's also creating hell. It's also creating demonic, evil, crazed, nightmare bullshit. Because it can. Not because it wants to, but because it can. And it's only after such things are created that such a force could turn around and think to itself, well, what is any of this? And the only way that it could actually discover anything about this is through the creations it has created, that it is also part of, right? We are it and it is us. And it's only after it's created. So take something like the Holocaust, right? So it's only after the Holocaust has been created that this energy could experience it, because it is experiencing it, listen to the voices that come out of it, and come to a larger understanding that, oh, that's shit. That's shitty. That's super shit. No, this is bad. We shouldn't do that. Nope. But here's where it gets really bad. Because it can't just go with its like thumb or whatever and just go, Holocaust, no Holocaust. Because to fundamentally do that means erasing it from its own memory. Right? If it exists within its memory, then it exists. because anything that it creates exists. It has to. It's the creative force. And so it can't just erase the Holocaust, because what would it do? It would erase it. It would notice that something is gone. It wouldn't know what it is, and so it would create it instantly. And so I imagine a space where there is, in the mind of God, this desire to eradicate this, but an inability to do so, because it must exist. So it's in a perpetual cycle of destroying it and rebuilding it. Like the energy is just going flick, 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 because it wants it gone, but it can't delete it. And so what's the solution? Well, the solution is to take that energy and to send it through down the timeline and get the other creatures that exist in it to never do it again. And to send it down and to hope that that's what happens, right? But of course, this also includes, like, it's not just creating one universe. There's infinite universes that exist. And so for every universe in which there is no Holocaust whatsoever, there's one where it's just, this is a Holocaust. The whole thing is a fucking Holocaust. And it definitely, certainly, 100% as a guarantee exists. That's the horror. And we live in a space where we hope it doesn't happen to us. But it might. And it can. And it does. As a guarantee. So what that means is that as we live our lives free from the reality of a universe like that, we should be very grateful. We should be very grateful. Because the true horror of existence is that people go through absolutely horrific things, not because they're being punished, not because they've done something wrong, not because they need to prove something, but simply because they can. And for no other reason. So look at your lives and be grateful. I think humans don't have the mental capacity to understand what it is to not exist at all. I think that's true, Ben. Non-existence is completely foreign to us. Like it's just we can't actually get it into our space at all. So you reject karma and rebirth. I think reincarnation can definitely be a thing. That to me seems like reincarnation seems fairly straightforward. To me that makes sense. That like time isn't linear. Right? Like time isn't linear. Like it's completely the case that like things can pop around and do all that kind of stuff, and this thing can be much more complex. I've never liked the concept of karma. I think that's a very human way of looking at things. That the idea that like I did good things and that will pass down into a next life or something like that, right? Like I think that's a fine articulation of like, if you build something good now, then later on, further iterations will enjoy the benefit of that goodness. Like, that makes sense. Like, if we build a transit system, then future generations will enjoy the usage of that transit system. Right? It's a very, like, karmic sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Like, it's not a... But do I literally believe that if I do good things in this life, that I will, in a future life, directly benefit, or there'll be some kind of positive energy or something like that that comes my way because of it? Oh, my bad, CR. That's okay. Here we go, Cotton. You got text. We got text, and we're over time, but I'm talking about the thing I like to talk about. The God existing question was never about God. The question was about how we behave toward each other. And either we understand how to treat each other, or we have to trust that the divine reveals that standard of conduct to us through priests. And maybe an archaic book that prescribes pain is the law. The question of God existing was not a problem of semantics. It was a question of bending the knee to theocracy or secular reason. If they didn't have a God, then there was no reason to respect a theocratic will to policy and power. Yeah, you're starting to get into the power structures of religious, like that's human institutions are always corrupt and are always shitty, always, right? The best that we can hope for is that we can make an institution that attempts to check the corruption, right? But it is inevitable that human institutions become corrupted, and you can tell that that's true based on the history of the church, right? Here's an organization that was supposed to be paying fealty to the idea of a large power God and all of this, and it completely loses the thread almost immediately and becomes essentially a tool for empire spreading, right? And you're not wrong that there is like an onboarding of like, this is our language. This is the language that we use to communicate these ideas. And if you are also doing that, then we trust each other. We're on the in. We're in the in group. Yeah. It only took 300 years, yeah, when it became part of the Roman Empire, yeah. And religion especially is a very complex sort of thing that we don't really understand that much, because, and we certainly don't understand its usefulness in a pre-Enlightenment world, right? That it's difficult for us to imagine a world that is bereft of the narratives that come out of the Enlightenment period, right? It's very, very, very tough to put yourself in that position. And that's why reading texts like Aquinas and Augustus are so difficult for modern readers, because they're writing pre-Enlightenment. And so there's a lot of language that gets used where it's rooted in like a storytelling, and it's rooted in the show, the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Darmok, really captures what I'm talking about here, where the Enterprise encounters a group of aliens who they can translate their language, and so they understand what they're saying, but the aliens speak in allegory and stories. And so they'll say things like Darmok at Tanagra, right? They'll just say Darmok at Tanagra. Now you understand what I said, but you don't understand what I mean, right? And I feel like that's the truth in how cultures and religions communicate with one another, that you can understand literally what they're saying, but you don't understand the deeper implication or the meaning behind it. And it isn't until you understand their stories and you understand their history that you can create a way to communicate with one another. I found that episode Darmok to be very helpful with understanding that concept. And you can see when other people get caught in that. And you're hitting on something here, Content, that standard of conduct to use through priests. So something that happened in the early days of Christianity, and Eric knows all about this, because Eric's fairly well read in this regard too, is that there was a rising of the Gnostics. And the Gnostics were really grabbing hold of this idea that, wait a minute, if Christ as a human is the Son of God, doesn't that also make me the Son of God? Doesn't that make you a daughter of God? Doesn't that make each of us a child of God? And doesn't that mean that we can just connect to this energy without any intercessory whatsoever? That we can just directly connect to this energy as the divine beings that we are? So you can see in the early days of Christianity, there is sort of this understanding that kind of links pretty closely to the way I talk about reality, that we don't need an intercessory. We don't need some kind of person to be in the way, to be a spiritual... Like, I don't need a buddy to go talk to God for me, right? But you can see the problem with that if your interest is population control. You can see the problem with that if your interest is in keeping power for yourself, right? if people believe that they are divine beings who are talking to God directly, and they believe that everybody is doing that, and they communicate like that as equals and peers, well, you can't control that. You can't control those people. That is a free, independent people that hold on to that system of thought. And so what do? You got to go in, you got to put in your own priests, and you got to put in your own hierarchy, and you got to put in your own structure. You got to put in your own way of thinking about the world and all of this kind of stuff. And say that, oh, no, you can't go talk to God. You got to talk to me, and I'll go talk to God, right? No, you can't talk to Jesus. You got to talk to Mary, and then Mary will go talk to Jesus for you. Right? Like, you got to put all these steps in. You got to make it more complex than it actually is. Right? That's what that all is. You got to take something that's actually very simple, very straightforward, very powerful to understand, which is that you are connected to the divine source. That the energy that exists within you is the divine energy that you can tap into, and you can figure things out, and you can discuss yourself by yourself. You don't need a friend. Right? But they don't want that. They don't want that. They want you to think that you need a buddy. And if you give me 5 shekels, I'll make sure that God really loves you. Right? So it's making the simple complex on purpose. For exactly the reasons that you think. Once again, the culprit is capitalism. When the walls fell, his arms wide open. Exactly, bud. Exactly. We have this disagreement over the Gnostic versus Christianity. The Christian did believe that we are divine beings and become gods. The difference is that the Gnostics didn't believe we have a bodily resurrection, while the Christians do. The whole system of priest-Mary came after the Council of the Nicaea. Council of Nicaea was the moment, Eric, for sure. Like, that we can both agree on. Like, the Council of Nicaea is the moment when the power structure of Christianity takes over the cultural force of Christianity and infuses itself more closely with the power structure in order to maintain power. Like, that's absolutely the case. What do you think the reason is for ancient religions to have a large number of gods versus most modern religions having only one? What you'll find, actually, Ben, is that the ancient religions... so Hinduism is the perfect example of this. Every religion eventually gets to there's one God. They all do it, right? That the Hindus are the case in point. They created a god for literally everything. You got like the god of the light bulb. You got the god of the cup, the coffee god, the TV god. You got the god of the pillow, right? You got the god of love. You've got the god of sex. You got the god of teeth, right? You got the god of bones. Like you've got everything's a god, right? But there's an understanding that each one of those is just an aspect of the larger energy of, in Hinduism, it's Brahma, right? That it is all one thing, but these are all just one aspects of that thing. And they all do this eventually, right? And it's easy to see how it begins, right? That like a group of roving monkeys, like we all were, are going around. They literally don't know anything. They're just in the thing, and there's lightning and shit. So they're like, wow, that's the god of thunder right there, right? And so it's easy to see how initially it would just be like, we use God as a word to describe something that obviously is powerful, that obviously is inhuman, that has its own force and its own kind of thing. And we also give it a label so that we understand it as its own thing, right? And then steadily over time, as the idea develops, there comes a stronger understanding. They're like, okay, like all of that is real, but it's all in a singular energy. Yeah, eventually, it's totally the truth, dude. It's always the truth, every single time. Like this idea, like the ancient Greeks were like this. I don't read it. Go read their stuff. Like that's the best I can give you. But it just seemed like it. I have never encountered a religion that stays pantheistic, that stays like, oh, we've got a handful of gods, and that's it. It's always the case that like, oh, we've got these gods, and they are all part of some larger energy that is itself the god. It just always goes that way. And maybe they downplay that aspect. Maybe they're very like, yeah, like that's great and all, but we like the Greeks totally did this for sure. The Greeks were 100% like, we've got our pantheon, and there's this one energy thing, yabba 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 yeah, god, Aphrodite, right? They absolutely they loved that pantheon, and they weren't going to replace that pantheon with like the one true god. They weren't going to do that, even though they could acknowledge it. They were still like, yeah, but come on, look at these characters, this cast of colorful characters. Like they weren't gonna just like get rid of. They weren't just gonna get rid of it because they wanted to, right? And especially the Greeks. Like the Greeks loved those guys, and there's a reason they persist, because they're strong characters. One of the things I always like to point out is that the pantheistic gods of yore still exist in our society. That the gods definitely still persist and are still here. They've just rebranded themselves, right? And they've rebranded themselves as brands, right? That all of the ancient gods are here. They're just brands instead of gods. That's how they're understood now. It's most explicitly seen through the character of Nike, right? We all know what Nike is, right? The swoosh, the whole thing, right? The just do it, right? Nike. Well, Nike was and is the ancient Greek god of victory, right? And how did it work? So there was a temple, a building, right, where you could go in, you could buy some article of clothing that had Nike's icon on it. It was understood that's Nike's icon. And you could wear it, and that made you a follower and acolyte of Nike to the degree that you had the presentation of Nike, right? And it was understood that you were trying to pursue this idea of victory or these concepts of this kind of stuff, and it also made you part of that clique or cult or whatever you want to call it, right? You were of the Nike group. Okay, well, what happens today? You walk into a building, you buy a piece of clothing. It's got the little swoosh on it, right? You put it on. It's understood that you're carrying the idea of victory or sport or any of that kind of stuff, and it makes you part of that little clique and that little cult. It's the exact same thing. It's just instead of it being a person, the goddess Nike, it's this little swoop. So the gods exist. They're still with us. They've just rebranded as brands. All right. I think that's going to be the end of this, guys. I love talking about the religious stuff. I really do. I respect... I understand people get a little hoobie-jooby about it and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't change anything. I even managed to talk about it without talking about the chakras for once. Which the chakra system is I love talking about the chakra system. So we'll get there one day. Alright guys, good stream. Always remember, this seems apropos, always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes that you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity that they need you to be. Revolt. Rebel. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.